remember the new intro being that sort of bombastic and over the top, I must say. That was rather dynamic. All right, folks, we're here. Grin, Grappler, Arn Anderson. It feels like one that really is kind of destined to happen. Way overdue, I think it's fair to say. Famously, Arn Anderson, the wrestler who forced Bob to change our voting system and get rid of the polls, which I thought was, kind of controversial elements of this. But nonetheless, we're here. We're fired up to talk about some professional wrestling, or the Enforcer, to be exact. Contrarian Alex, you are muted. I don't know if you know that or not, so I'll tell you that now. And I will ask, how are you on this wonderful Tuesday evening?
Good. It's still too fucking hot in Central Texas, so that's kind of been. I had to clean out the intake or the drain line in my air conditioner unit today. So again, it should not be this hot, but global warming's a hoax. Anyway, football's stupid. Also, let me add that.
Wow. Playing all the hits here out the gate. I like it.
Oh, hilariously, my current issues and the pain in my life that football has brought can't even be escaped in this episode of the Grin Grappler, and we'll circle back to that here in Act 3. But I am well. I'm excited to be here. What do you do after you set, gate records and home distribution records with Alexa Bliss? You bring in Arn Anderson. That's the way to go with this. And, I mean, we always have fun with this, but I think the four of us and some of our differing takes on wrestling from time to time, I think each of us are probably going to bring a different perspective to the career and work of Arn. And we've got a tremendous bevy of matches to discuss. So excited as always to be here. Yeah,
absolutely. He's among the most Grin grapplers to ever Grin grapple, right? I mean, he really is. He's got to be high on the list. I think like him, maybe Fit and Regal, they're like inevitable Grin grappler. Destinations, Bobby, you fought very hard to make this never happen. We'll never forget that, but you're welcome here nonetheless. How are you this evening?
I'm doing well. Hilariously enough, I'm not going to either of the NXT shows in the next 2 weeks anymore, which is very funny. But
wait, stop. Why are you not going to Chicago anymore?
Because Ticketmaster had a data breach and someone got my account and transferred the tickets themselves, which kind of sucks. But also, I'm getting a refund, so whatever. Fucking wild.
You tweeted this story?
Yeah. But I got them through PayPal too, so I'm gonna get a refund from either Ticketmaster or PayPal, so it's whatever, and I'll just watch it at home. But yeah,
tell him you want Oasis tickets.
Bobby, if you tweeted the story, Bobby tweets 75 times an hour. It's kind of hard.
That's what I was, because I hadn't seen it. I was thinking, surely Bob has not left this out and has tweeted about everything else that ever possibly happened in the day. All right, interesting. My Twitter now is just links. I've lost that war.
Yeah,
nothing left to offer. All right, beautiful. The Oracle of Wrestling back in the building once again. How are you this evening?
This is my first of 3 or 4 shows this week. So I'm excited. The heat is a problem here in East Tennessee, but it is finally going to go away with a hurricane rain coming through for the next 72 hours and possibly flooding. So, that's good. And then I have an oil leak in my car, and it'll be really great to check my oil when it's pouring rain outside tomorrow, before I go to work. But
Shane Helms is going to make you do the job one way or the other, brother.
Hey, at least it's Oracle Week on the Grin, right? We got some like Grin Gold gimmicks to promote at the end of this show. We're here to talk about Arn Anderson. I have got this set up now in my living room where I can. Because we'll be doing watch-alongs and such on the Gold. So I've got NXT on in the background.
There it is.
We're hear that
through it, and we're here to talk about AA, brother.
We are. What did you make of Machine Gun's camo shorts? Or I was very uncomfortable.
I saw that shit, and I immediately got my phone and I said, this shit's popping me. Like, what on earth are they wearing?
Is that the most WCW Saturday morning at Disney taping look that's ever occurred outside of that setting? That was alarmingly WCW worldwide, right? It was insane.
It looked like Sergeant Craig Pitbull Pittman.
Exactly.
His car was fucking gear. But I think Pittman had the long.
He did.
Camera,
Yeah.
So I guess
he's made funny of by Machine Gun being in such good shape, which makes it an incredible juxtaposition. But That's another show for another day. We're of course talking about family, though, when it comes to the Andersons, as we know, the very legitimate family, the Anderson family. Arn Anderson, of course, our subject, folks. We hope you're well this evening. We're aware that this is going to be a difficult sequel for us. I mean, the Alexa Bliss episode, kind of our UFC 40, right, Alex? Fair to say. And,
Yes.
We're going to try our best.
The outlier. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's important that we kind of get back to basics, you know. It's great to talk about Billy Kay and all that came with that, but let's talk about some what does Tony Schiavone say? Arm dragon twists. My favorite Schiavone thing that doesn't make any sense. So that's what we're going to do here this evening.
That time.
Arn Anderson. There you go. Arn Anderson, certainly an all-time favorite of mine. And this is a hell of a journey. What do we span here? Just shy of 10 years, right? Just shy of 10 years across our matches. Early 86 through to late 95. And on what makes him a unique Grin Grappler is, of course, there's not like this sort of wild transformation in look or style, right? Arn emerged on the scene as a man in his young 20s who wrestled like a 45-year-old. And that would be the case forever and ever. But you do get to see the evolution of his partners and his promotion and so on and so forth, which really does make for interesting, especially with where we end up. A fascinating journey for sure. Let's start as we always do. Let's talk about our fandom of the wrestler in question. Bobby Two Shoes. Arn Anderson, the Enforcer. When did you become a fan? If you did, tell me the whole story. Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, again, like a lot of those guys that didn't really wrestle in WWE after WCW shut down, it was like, you know, a lot of figuring out about him wasn't until the network, but you know, he'd be on Confidential pretty regularly talking about whatever they were going on, so I was kind of aware of him. He'd be on the DVDs and stuff, so like he'd pop up, but like, you know, it'd be clips, and you know, obviously the clip from WrestleMania 18 where he hits the spine buster was kind of in heavy rotation when I started watching. So yeah, but yeah, as far as like watching actual matches, you know, again, not till the network came along, and then especially, you know, starting with January 1993 WCW, like I did last year, where kind of been going through, and he's there, and you know, he's around, and it's been really interesting, and you know, going back through this stuff was interesting too, and like, you know, I'm a fan probably even more after today, and like I liked most of these matches, and I can't explain why I liked all or most of them, but like there's just something about them, man.
Arn is very unique in that way because he is very understated, very restrained. And so his matches are seldom going to have these sort of big, sweeping kind of, you know, highlight reel moments. But his execution is such that he'll take something very simple, like a spine buster, for example, and make it iconic, right? And even DDT. And there's a bunch of different things he does. The way he throws his southpaw punches, and like there's a lot. We'll get into it. But yeah, an interesting one. Oracle, what about you? You're an Arn Anderson fan, and this must be a hell of a journey, I feel.
Oh yeah. So I was you know, I was born in Horseman country in South Carolina, so I was always familiar with Arn. Even before I started watching, you know, I knew the name Arn Anderson.
Right.
Once I started watching in early 2000, Arn wasn't really around. Even in WCW, like when I would watch Thunder, he wasn't really around. But he first showed up for me when Flair got the, you know, partial ownership role gimmick and the feud with Vince. And then, of course, the build to WrestleMania 18, he was involved in that with Taker. I'll never forget watching WrestleMania 18 in my parents' bedroom when this was a few years after we moved up to the Chattanooga area. And Arn comes in and hits a spine buster. And you can tell that like Arn was a big deal because my dad fucking lost his shit when Arn came in and hit the spine buster. Like dad was like pumping his fist. That's double A Arn Anderson. You know, he's like doing that shit and like fucking losing his mind. Like, you know, it just goes to show you, like, you know, because I mean, my dad lived in South Carolina for 20 years, and my two oldest brothers, like, you know, were raised there, whatever. Arn and that in the South was like, in the Horsemen were just like, I mean, that's a big fucking deal, you know.
Yeah.
And just all the shows that I unfortunately didn't get to go to because I wasn't old enough. But you know, I've mentioned before the my brother Dylan was at the Clash with the match we covered with Steamboat's return to WCW. in Savannah, Georgia. Dylan was at that show. Of course, Arn was great in that and does the very awesome. He's just a man. He's just a man. After Ricky returns, but once I got into the message board stuff and watched all the old stuff. I mean, I gravitated towards him, and his promo style in particular is what immediately came out to me. I think he's the best promo of all time, at least top 3. He could be very serious and very goofy all in one match. Like, just and I think we picked a really good slate of matches because we see him as a heel and as a babyface.
Right.
And it's fascinating to watch him because you have to really pay close attention because he only does certain tweaks, to change that. He's very good at still being Arn Anderson, whether he's a face or a heel, which is always what you want in a wrestler, Too many times nowadays, and here we go doing the, it used to be better shtick, but too many times nowadays when a wrestler changes from face or heel, they change everything about themselves.
Yes.
Everything about the characters changed, everything. And it's just like, just like that. Arn is one, really of many, but he's a good example of an all-time great who was still Double A Arn Anderson. He was still the enforcer, whether he was a babyface or a heel.
Right.
He was still Arn Anderson. But a walk behind her, as Dusty said, but he was still Double A. But yeah, just an absolute favorite of mine, one of the all-time greats. Today would still fare very well in a top 100 of mine. If I were to make one today, just a tremendous all around, one of the great pro wrestlers of the last 40 years for sure.
I love it. Tremendous stuff. Contrarian Alex, I'm intrigued. I don't know how much you and I have talked about the enforcer Arn Anderson. Tell me about your own fandom when it comes to Double A. Go for it.
Arn Anderson was one of the WCW guys that I remember from my childhood. Like, I didn't even associate Ric Flair with WCW really, because my first real memories start when he's the alleged real world champion in the World Wrestling Federation, and so, which is funny because his run there was a year, and but Double A I always really associated with WWF WCW so much so that I remember being at a video store as a kid and looking at the back cover of the Survivor Series '89 and seeing Arn Anderson. I was like, what? Like, I had my little kid mind could not comprehend that the enforcer had stepped in the rings of the New York territory. Had the Galoob figure, which
a classic.
It's a really good one for Arn too, because the Galoob ones were the hard plastic, so they didn't have like articulation. But Arn's had like these. His arms were out by his side, so you could do the spine buster with them. It was which, man, that Galoob WCW ring, I'd put guys through that. We'll talk about this more when we get to our closing thoughts. But someone who I view as like a perfect undercard professional wrestler, and I know a lot of people would find that term demeaning these days with undercard because everyone's supposed to be in the main event and be a champion. I know, but like, talk about a guy who understood the craft and where his level of it was. Now, from there, my fan experience, obviously the NWO, that whole angle was like groundbreaking, especially for my little 10-year-old brain. And he was at the forefront of like the first year of that program. He was one of the defenders of WCW. People always remember Sting, but like when it started, it was like Arn, Rick, Luger, and Savage were the ones like leading the charge for WCW. And eventually his retirement, I remember watching that, and then what followed, which is funny, but that's not what we're here to talk about. And then, the respect that just came with him, like that. He was one of those guys that when he talked, everyone listened. It felt like your grandpa or, one of your dad's older brothers was like speaking to you about how it used to be. It was always, he just carried such weight with his presence and his like words and shit, which goes a long way. I was fortunate enough to the one and only WWF Hall of Fame ceremony I went to was in Miami in 2012. And that was when the Four Horsemen went in. And I'll always remember the moment of they each one by one kind of talked, and JJ started, and then Flair came up, and Woo, and Tully had a good speech, and then Barry Windham said some things, and then Arn got like the main event slot of that introduction segment, where Arn was the last one to come up. And like when they all came out, they got like the standing ovation. But then when Arn came and took the podium, everyone like he got his own standing ovation for it. It was like those ceremonies are stupid, but I'll always remember that. That was pretty cool because Arn and even then, he just kind of gave the nod of like, all right, come on, we got to go home here in a minute. So the X8 spine buster, one of the most flawlessly executed moves in the history of professional wrestling, is that run-in spine buster in the event tee tucked into black jeans. And the part of it everyone forgets is that in about 30 seconds after that, he takes a boot and blades off of it. So Arn Anderson, a pro's pro. Someone who, like, my memory is there was no wrestling without him. I know I've said that about like Terry Funk and Ricky Steamboat and some of the veterans we've done, but when my memories of wrestling began, it's Arn Anderson and WCW. And truthfully, now that I'm talking through this with my words, I might have associated with him with WCW as much as like Sting. Like I said, it was more so than Flair, but it was I could always just see that, be it worldwide or the curtains that we see illustrated in the Clash of the Champions, the kind of glittery ones. I can just always see Arn coming out through those.
He was a constant, no doubt about it. Oracle, what do you say, mate?
Dylan always has a great story about when he and his buddy would go to those shows in the early 90s. Sometimes they would get to go backstage every once in a while. And that one time, Arn was back there, and it was when he was on one of his heel runs. And Arn, was super nice to the kids, but like they're telling him who his favorite wrestlers were, and Arn was like, well, he was like, well, I don't like him very much, but like. He was like doing kayfabe and everything.
He was that way. I mean, I remember on the Horseman DVD, he's like entirely in kayfabe.
Yeah.
And he's like, we broke Dusty's leg, and he's just like dead serious about it. It's incredible. He's fascinating. And now he does sometimes on his podcast he does that too. And it's like, brother, you're on the network of 83 weeks. This is not the time for this kind of it's kind of consistency. But that's the enforcer for you. He is who he is. He ain't changing. Very, very interesting one. He's the kind of wrestler that he has a sort of built-in reputation. If you're like a smart fan or a nerdy fan, he's always talked about by his peers in a way that you kind of have like an immediate understanding of what role he played and his reputation in the industry. And he absolutely fits that in every which way, from his demeanor to the way he wrestles. He's so matter of fact and kind of like workmanlike, right? He's just so direct with the way he approaches things. And I remember, I've always talked about on this show, it comes up a lot, like the WCW kind of diving into that archive. And if you watch WCW at any kind of length, he will immediately become one of your favorite wrestlers. Because what's lost is, I talked about this recently on a match review show. Someone requested, I think it was Colt, he requested Alex Wright and Arn Anderson from like Slamboree, something or another, I forget the year, maybe 95. I was talking about how Arn's work is not best understood or appreciated when watching in a vacuum. Arn's work is most appreciated when you're actually watching a full WCW show and Arn walks out and you get to have the experience of, oh, thank God Arn Anderson's here. Because that would happen a lot. WCW would always have a range of quality and there'd be some crazy stuff, some ridiculous stuff. It would get too gimmicky for its own good at times as they tried to kind of match the other channel. Imagine that. And Arn Anderson was like, he would like steady the ship, right? Let's get back to some pro wrestling here. And
he would do that thing. Like, he would be like as serious as a heart attack doing promos with the Dungeon of Doom. He's like, now let's get one thing straight, Taskmaster. Like just the way he would treat everything like it was serious, which, what a concept.
Indeed. Folks, we got a super chat here from Brainbuster. Shout out to Brainbuster. He'll be live tomorrow night on LNG Gold for the Dynamite Grin Along, which I will not be making that town, but is he, Novi, and Caden Lee of the dance fame? Brainbuster says, oh, how? I agree. Fair. Very, very fair. Bob, any thoughts?
No, he's right.
Bob, what should people do? If they're stopping by, they're enjoying the shows thus far. What's the like button?
Smash that like button, ring the bell, all that good stuff.
Did you see him wind up for that? Did you see
Yeah.
He pulled that. He pulled that on. He had all that shit ready.
We were recording something, and I told Bob to just do the thumbs up when he was done. And when he did it, I realized that was his gimmick. I was like, I've been preparing him unknowingly. All right. With that established, so yeah, he became a fast favorite, and he's now just someone that, like, if I want to watch wrestling, I'll find some Arn stuff. Because Arn also has a bunch of stuff that's not like celebrated or high profile because it's just on random WCW TVs, and all of it's like good and watchable, right? So,
Oh yeah,
fascinating catalog for sure. All right, let's dive in here. Our first act begins on the March 1st, 1986 edition of World Championship Wrestling. It was taped on February 23rd. This, of course, allows us to feature WTBS Studios, Techwood Drive, all of those great things. As he meets Ronnie Garvin here for the TV title. Arn is 27 years old as we meet him here. And looks every bit of 50. Incredible stuff. He's been wrestling since 1981. This was something I was pondering, right? You realize how few wrestlers are on national TV outside of NXT that have been wrestling as like little amount of time as Arn has at this point. And Arn is wrestling like he is legitimately been wrestling for 30 years in this match. Like, he's already got his entire game figured out. I think he actually does get better as we go along. I've always thought the early 90s was Arn's peak, but he basically is Arn Anderson here, right? In early 1986. And it's like, he's a 5-year pro, dude.
He looks also like. Also, I need to apologize. I just realized my microphone was up.
I was going to private chat you, but yeah, it was kind of funny, so I was just letting you rock with it.
Oh no! Okay, it's we got some thunder here, so I'm kind of on dog duty right now too. She's here, and I'm trying to keep her. She wants to talk about the Enforcer too. He looks like a road-worn man, and I mean that in the sense of like he physically looks like he drinks the way that people said Flair did, but Arn was like a clean cat, is my understanding. He didn't partake booze, yes, but like the other stuff. His gimmick bag wasn't overflowing. He was a man that liked a cold beer. Yeah,
he certainly did. Yeah, you're right. Yes, Flair, of course.
He's 27 with like the fucking George Costanza comb over going on.
I legit think he looks worse here than he does in like the second act, like considerably so. I think, like, because he's kind of like there's kind of elements of like puppy fat to him too. Yeah, he was a strange build, and he looks hilarious here. Just to give some backstory for those of you that are not familiar with the Enforcer, the tale goes he was working for Watts, and the tale goes that JYD said he looked like an Anderson, and Watts called Crockett and. Because that was the thing back in the day, right? You'd get guys booked around the country because the idea was the more great wrestlers that are out there, the better for the industry. That was kind of the broad idea. That was a very common thing to reach out to a promoter, get a guy a spot here, so on and so forth, and they would move on accordingly. He, of course, is swiftly paired with Ole Anderson as his younger brother. And initially, and this is something that's an interesting thing, and there's a Four Horsemen book. I should have reread it. But they always would change the law on like, because Rick was like a cousin of the Andersons, was initially what they said, right? He was family. Mm-hmm. But then, like, they would eventually just go, oh, they're friends. I don't know. Whatever. Make of it what you will. But nonetheless, he's an Anderson. He is, of course, the TV champion here. This episode of TV starts with Garvin and Flair and some footage in that regard. Arn does a promo in which he explains that Ronnie Garvin is maybe a top contender to be many things, and he lists of those. He says he could be a top contender to be a murderer or a top contender to be a pervert, which an interesting way to take things. That was the Enforcer's words on this very TV. Oracle, what did you make of our first match? This was probably our least famous, right, of the matches we covered. This was a fun trip down memory lane. What did you think?
Oh, yeah. I mean, just here, you get the immediate sense of Arn's craftiness in the ring.
Yep.
His ability to, and I know I'm kind of talking in broad strokes here, but his ability to sort of react to everything with his expressions, whether he's, going out at the end of the match, checking it, desperately checking for the time. Little things like selling those. I mean, Ronnie Garvin with his freaking chops, man. My God. Just Arn selling of that. Garvin, of course, I think it was Garvin. He like snuck in like 2 or 3 really vicious headbutts early on.
Yep.
To which David Crockett went, "Oh."
Sounds like him.
Like it's a really good representation of how Arn sort of smoothly reacts, and he does it in such a sort of believable way too. He can be histrionic about things, but it's in a very believable way. It's not over the top. It's like he's very much reacting about how you would think somebody would react if they're in this sort of weird fight that they're in, like he's that's always been my favorite part of Arn, is how smart he is and crafty he is as a wrestler in terms of what he does physically, in terms of like working over a body part or just the way he uses the ring, the way he emotes.
Very present. He's very, very present.
Yeah.
It's he's always working.
Yes.
Which is just, it's really honestly a lost art form. Not a lot of wrestlers are, doing that anymore. But he was honestly one of the masters of it. Just, I know it sounds weird, but like the lasting image of this match for me was him rolling, like him like taking a breather and asking how much time was left in the match. That's Arn Anderson to me.
Yeah.
He just knows how to play off of the environment that he's in, the wrestler that he's up against, situation that he's in. One of the best to ever do it at that. And he does it in a very believable way, while still coming off as someone who's a threat.
Yeah. I think it was good also to get, to your point, this is kind of one of the things Arn's most famous for is his role as a TV champion and those time limit matches. And this got that featured. For those of you who don't know, because I'm sure there are now, which is kind of sad, but Hands of Stone, Ronnie Garvin, the nickname kind of like, I guess the comp would be like when a guy works Sheamus on TV now, the whole thing is just going to whack each other a lot. That's kind of what Ronnie Garvin did. It's not like 1-to-1, but like roughly. And so like this entire match is built around like a middle ground of them doing like intense professional wrestling and sometimes exchanging blows. But Arn's not going to just like go in there and brawl with the guy whose gimmick is he's a brawler, right? So Arn instead makes like that. He weaponizes that and he makes the whole thing about warning the referee, like, watch the fist. And he's terrified of turning this into a brawl. Yeah, it's like, it's just the natural story to tell. It's perfect. And of course, being the heel, he's still the guy who throws the first punch, right? He fires a couple left hands. And it's just like, it's easy because he's just very, very thoughtful. That's the obvious match to have. That's the right match to have. So that's what much of this is. Bobby, couple questions. Firstly, what did you think? Secondly, how many Ron Garvin matches have you seen? I'm intrigued.
This might be the first one, honestly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, so you don't know about the Hammer Jammer?
No.
Oh, baby. He feuded with Greg Valentine in the WWF, and it led to the Hammer Jammer. That was
okay.
Yeah.
All right. This was fine. It was a nice match. It was a little like deliberate, but I think that was by design. Because they were going for the time limit draw anyway. My first thing too was just Arn's too smart for whatever Garvin's going to throw at him, and that shows even just not really having a ton of knowledge about, both guys and how they work. Just, he's too smart for it. And they conveyed that really well. Flair showing up on commentary was cool. There's not a lot. This is one of the matches where it's like, there's not a ton to say, but like, it's good. And like, I got that a couple times where like, I don't have a ton to talk about, but like, it's good and it's enjoyable and it's nice to watch. And if I had to guess, they weren't getting, normal guy or, like established guy against established guy on these shows. It's probably average jobber a lot of the time. So like, you could tell the crowd liked this and it worked, man.
is also, this is going back far enough that this is a time where like every match had a job of establishing certain things that happen in wrestling matches. And that's something that makes Arn a unique person to do in this format, because Arn would take that part of your job very seriously. So like, if you watch the way he locks up with Ronnie Garvin, that isn't like just a thing he's doing to do it. That's not like a formality. Like that's the match, basically, to your point, but you quite deliberate. I don't think you're wrong to, but like a lot of this match is them wrestling, chain wrestling, hold for hold, and Arn with his face kind of expressing caution and concern for Garvin as a brawler. And again, it's an interesting match to watch like this because, as you said, there's not many star versus star matches. And Ronnie Garvin was a big time. I mean, because of the way the NWA title reign thing came to be and all of that, people dismissed. Ronnie Garvin was really over, dude. Like, people liked Ronnie Garvin. And Arn Anderson here is the heel. And, like, it's a big deal. They very much just color inside the lines and just have a wrestling match. But it has that grit, Alex, right? There's a certain flavor to this that I found compelling. What did you think, Alex?
Oh, yeah. You and Bobby and Oracle and anyone that's listened to me talk before know this is very much my shit. And you're right. I'm glad you jumped on that. Garvin not only was over, he was good. And I think there's a weird skewed version of history because of his, Starrcade main event with Flair and his world title, run, so to speak, or push for it is a bit complicated. And then his WWF run is kind of weird, and the Hammer Jammer thing is really fucking stupid. Then let Bobby to bring it home. The Greg Valentine's finisher was the figure 4, and the Hammer Jammer was like a shin guard that Ronnie Garvin wore in their match at the Royal Rumble. And so he put the figure 4 on just the same, but since he had this special boot on, it didn't work. And Ronnie Garvin's literally doing this to him on the other side of the figure 4. And it's a very odd, lasting image of him. But you watch this.
My favorite, real quick, sorry, Alex. My favorite part of the whole feud is when Ron Garvin does ring announcing duties.
Yes. To Garvin's credit, too. Remember when he...
I remember because he gets fired, right? He does referee, and then I forget this. Correct. Alex, go for it. This is a whole other thing.
Who did he dress in drag in Attack? He dressed up as a woman, and then that was like a heel turn that he took the money from, I think, J.J. Dillon to beat somebody. But to his credit, man, he went all out on it. Got a full face of makeup and everything. Here, though, rugged is the way to describe it. And Arn's beefy here, man. He's a big boy. I think you find that a lot, especially with wrestlers. That God, you ever seen Flair when he debuted? He was like 320 pounds. The idea was just you come in and you look like fucking Dick Murdoch or Dusty Rhodes, and then go from there. And so you see a lot of guys from this era. If you look at them earlier in their run, they're usually a bit meatier than they would, until they settled into what they were going to be. David Crockett is not good on commentary. My note says David Crockett, LOL. Cool little full circle thing here. Our first match is reffed by Randy Anderson, and our last match is reffed by Randy Anderson.
There you go.
Nice. So you guys have kind of covered what is great about this match, and it's just a simple television match that tells a story, telling stories, as Oracle would say. But so I took the opportunity to write down, because it's television studio wrestling, you can hear almost everything everyone's saying. So at one point, Ronnie Garvin has Arn. I think he's doing that like kind of double shoulder stretch on him, and he's slapping him in the belly and on the chest, and he goes, "Talk to me, boy!" And because Arn's just they're like kind of screaming in anguish. When Arn gets on the offensive, you hear a woman in the crowd go, "Get him, Arn!" And you know who she's there for. And shortly after that, Ronnie turns back on the offensive and gets Arn into a submission, and it could be the woman's husband, but someone goes, "Hey, Arn, what are you gonna do now?" Garvin almost completely overcorrects on a back body drop and blows both of his little ankles out.
That was crazy. Yeah.
His back gets worked over, leading to probably my favorite part in the match, where he finally gets Arn back down, and then he goes for an elbow drop, and the elbow drop's beautiful. But after landing it, he like hurts his own back because his back had been being worked on. Simple shit like that. Ric Flair makes a cameo, and probably the biggest reaction to me of the entire match is the action spills to the outside, and Rick takes it upon himself to call Arn Anderson Arnold. He goes, "Come on, Arnold! Let's go!" I'm the world champion, etc., etc. So this is more of this, please. This shit always pops me. The studio TV wrestling where you can see like the fucking floor cameras on wheels behind the guys as they're walking around the set and whatnot. It's a lot of fun. Mission accomplished with this match.
This is definitely the kind of work that's suited to that too, because you can't see through shit they're doing, right? If you could be sitting inside that ring and you would not see a hole in their stuff. Like everything's gritty and scrappy. At one point when he's working the back, he has like sort of a bear hug, I think it is, and Garvin starts like gripping the back of Arn's skin. You know that he's like pulling at the skin. It's like one of those just kind of scrappy.
You're exactly right. Like
dudes.
Think of this, like John Cena, legitimately one of the greatest of all time. But think of him wrestling in a setting like this. Right. He screams spots in sold out stadiums, dude. So like imagine him working in something like this.
That's the other thing here that like I think gets lost to time is how much emphasis was put on you can't see through someone's work. That was such an important thing. I remember years ago seeing a match of a fellow. Now let me be clear. This could go in many directions. A fellow who recently joined AEW, and I think I'm the only person on this show does think, but I've been positive on him. He's a very exciting high flyer. He's going to wrestle Will Ospreay soon. And my brother and I just couldn't believe in the second row how much of his stuff was, you could see the magic trick. I guess would be the way I put it. I mean, and that's fine because who gives a shit, right? I mean, at this point, that's just the game, and his stuff's still exciting and spectacular. Some guys have that same problem, and they're trying to wrestle like Arn Anderson. So it is what it is. But my point is, if you sit in second row of an arena show, you're still like considerably further away than these people are here because they are literally like managing. Basically, they're at ringside and then some. Like there's no tope con helos, so they're right on top of the ring. It's different, right, Alex? Very different.
Yeah, it's and we've watched so much of this shit and we're perverts about it, but like one thing I can say just about this all 6 matches we do here, I think there's only one time that maybe 2 times in matches that like they kind of got disjointed, but Arn still has the gumption to like do this shit or like put his face in his shoulder and like you said, I know things are different now, but we regularly on television see people what.
We do, and Cena's a good example because I think we've all been, sparkling with our praise.
Remember that tag at the end of 2022?
Right, and it's just, it's a different time, And Arn was John's lead agent, so it is what it is, right? What about one point when like Arn's working Garvin's arm and Garvin just slams his way out of it like he's Rampage Jackson? What an absolute
yes.
He would be, if Ron Garvin existed today, he would be like wrestling Twitter's favorite wrestler. He'd post a picture of his red chest every week and everyone would be like, look at this guy.
Dude, Sheamus was a really good comparison. Like, Garvin's 3 feet shorter than Sheamus, but they still, You're exactly right. Like if this Ron Garvin was, he would be like the only guy in the indies still that everyone's like, he's the only guy left that someone has to sign. He's the best.
He'd be going an hour with Blake Christian.
Man, immediately have to kill the joke. God damn it.
I disagree. I think that became a much stronger joke, in fact, because now I'm imagining him feeding like springboard cutters and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
It's a good match, dude. I like Arn Anderson. It's a good match. And it's such an Arn Anderson match. It's like, it's just tidy, just a tidy TV title match. Lovely. All right, let's move ahead here. November 27th, 1986, Starrcade. This, of course, closed out the Greensboro Coliseum portion of the show, which I think was aired. How did they air this? Did they like just jump back and forth? I always forget this. Or did they do one block in one place and then did they bounce back and forth? I feel like they did, didn't they?
I think so. Oracle, do you remember what the title of the show was?
Oh shit.
That's
the Skywalkers and the Skywalkers.
You got to say, who was the ring announcer? I just always hear in my mind, the Night of the Skywalkers. Right. Yeah, that's
yes, this is an interesting
Holy Grail event T-shirt. By the way, there was an event shirt for this where the Midnight Express and the Road Warriors were drawn as cartoons on it, like on the scaffold, and that's like a Holy Grail event shirt, right up there with Cage of Death 6.
This was also a hot commodity on the VHS shelves back in the late 80s. Dylan
Wow.
always tells about running the show many a time.
Oh, I believe that, actually. Yeah. I don't really like it as a show, but I believe it was like, if you saw the VHS, you'd be like, I need this. It's a different thing, right?
If you watch the TV shows from the time, the whole commercial was Cornette like hanging from the scaffold, and then it faded to black, but you could hear him land, and that's what and then oh god, Bubba.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, that sounds like a Carney trick until you realize the way that he fell would deliver beyond anything you could ever imagine. I mean,
exactly.
A true piece of history. The Andersons had an almost year-long title reign from early 85 to early 86. Here they are, the challengers. The Rock and Roll Express are, of course,
gods.
Over is like completely wasted on them, dude. Like, they're just... It can't actually be expressed, I think, the level of attraction they were.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is something that's happened in wrestling over the last, I'd say, 30 years now, where a tag team, even a tippy-top tag team, is still a mid-card attraction. Yes. That was not the Rock and Roll Express. Like, they would main event their own shows under the Crockett banner, and they would actively outperform, like, Dusty shows. Like,
Who was the last team that was, like, a main event attraction?
Probably Deuce and Domino, right?
Jesus.
Bliss Cross. No, I honestly, bro, legitimately.
It was Evolution.
That's actually a great question. Like a serious
Roadies,
nationwide.
The Roadies?
The Roadies.
The Warriors?
People, there was a series of like Raws and shit that New Age Outlaws main evented that people like bought them as like a main event attraction.
The Road Warriors would be they're very similar in timeline, right? Because
they are.
Yeah. Is there any since the 90s?
Well, of course, Rock and Roll's drew Mid-South too, and or main event there. And
the Outlaws.
There is, but like we're talking TNA at that point, then that stretches the definition of like,
Well, that's the thing was like
AMW Triple X,
Yeah. The Outlaws were a massive act, but I would argue they're more akin to the teams that we've seen, the top teams we've seen in WWE in recent years, where it's like they're a really big act, but they're still not going to be, like the Usos main event at WrestleMania, but you still wouldn't consider them to be like this sort of transcendent drawing live act, right? Well, I wouldn't anyway. I don't know. I'm willing to hear you out if you do, but yeah.
No, I know what you mean, and I think for some people, that's kind of not hard to understand, but more of just kind of a foreign concept because tag team wrestling is because now the whole thing, if like Usos, that's a great example, that WrestleMania main event. If a tag match does main event, it's treated as like a novelty or a one-off. And the whole thing with that match was the story was that they had been tag champs for a year, not that the Usos are like main event attraction.
It should be noted too that this is a bit of an extreme example because the Crockett territory was famously tag team centric and tag team friendly. That's very important, which means that there was kind of it wasn't foreign to the Crockett family, and that is important because
it's also unfair because the Rock and Roll Express were over at a level that not many people of any variety have ever been. Yeah.
Exactly, and that's the important thing here, folks, is that you can't express with words the way that people are reacting to the Rock and Roll Express. And this is a very interesting match. Arn is with Ole here. I don't know if I said that or not. Ole is in like peak old man form. I mean, famously miserable as a fella, and it translates to his work. In glorious fashion. This match is really interesting from a structural point of view. Really, really interesting. Now, I know Oracle's going to put out some numbers in that regard, so I'll start with you, Bobby. Just the match itself. Had you seen it before, and what did you think of it?
No, I never seen it. I enjoyed it a lot. Really good. It did throw me off that they used the actual tag rules in the cage, and then I remembered like the cages used to be to keep people out instead of to try and escape them, so it made a little more sense. Just the crowd, living and dying with everything the Rock and Roll Express did. Just good babyface versus heel stuff here, and tremendous. Yeah, I mean, it was great, and I really enjoyed it a lot, and. It kind of, you see similarities. I know Arn's with Tully in the next match, but it's kind of similar in the next match with the Rockers, where it's,
there's definitely an interesting comparison made there. Arn had some interesting comments on that. I never can tell if Arn's talking about wrestling like it's fake or real. I don't know. But he did have some interesting comments, Dak Brown. It did work out kind of nice that we go from this to the Rockers match.
Yeah.
You kind of see some elements there. This is archetype-wise kind of your classical tag situation. Right? Two burly, rough heels, two white meat, allegedly heartthrob baby faces. And, they get sympathy on the baby faces. But what's interesting is it just has some different quirks. Alex, I'll go to you. What did you make of this cage match here?
Brother, this is Southern fried wrestling right here, man.
This is.
Rock and Roll Express. So yet another chance, as I will always take, to tell my story about meeting Ricky Morton on Bourbon Street, WrestleMania 34 weekend, and he introduced himself to me as Bruce Pritchard. It's one of my favorite stories I ever have about a wrestler. And he had like one of those big necklaces on that like had flashing lights. He's like, "Hey, brother, Bruce Pritchard, how you doing?" All right, so Ricky and Robert come out to just howls. Like there's literally like, okay, you want to talk about like what was different and something I could contend that like used to be better. There are like legitimate screams of panic on one side of the ring when the women see that Ricky's bleeding. Like
Yes.
when Arn takes his head to the cage and he's bleeding. Like legitimate cries of terror, and give me that. It's an Anderson tag match, so you know what we get, Joe. We get limb work in a very high capacity. Ole to me is always one of those guys. You think of Ole, you think LOL. He was just such a miserable bastard, and he's so funny. His shoot interviews are funny to listen to. The way, like, Hulk Hogan was the shits, Ric Flair was the shits, never drew a dime, and it's like
He doesn't waver at all. It's
he
incredible.
says things that are objectively like false. Like you can prove he's he can prove he's wrong, but he still just stands in it so steadfast. It's admirable. But like you said, in a very weird way that translates to his work, because he's just a miserable, punishing bastard in there, man. He just wants to beat the shit out of these pretty boys and, break their arms if he can. It's a bit of a different formula for the Rock and Rolls in that the closing sequence is a bit quicker. Like, it was always Robert that got the hot tag, right?
Yeah, which they play with here, right? They kind of mess around with that. Mm-hmm.
So that formula is a bit reversed. But Ricky, my God, there's one part where he takes an Irish whip into the buckle and like throws himself into it, like with his shoulder, and just crazy shit. And his blade job here is fantastic too. It's so, just watching this is so far away from what wrestling is now. And this isn't like a bitching thing. It's just true. Like our production levels and everything are just so much higher now. Watching this, like the lights are just on the ring. It's like a smoke-filled building, the smoky bingo halls that Vince McMahon saved us from, and it just looks like there's parts of Ricky Morton selling here that, watching this through 2024 lenses, like it gets uncomfortable because the violence seems so real and so like palpable there. Like you can smell the iron in the ring, so to speak. Big fan. The sound of the ring is incredible. This old NWA ring. Was that old Bob Caudle on the call?
I'm pretty sure it was. Yeah, I forget who was on this because I know they switched the teams. Wasn't Bob on there?
I think it was Bob Caudle. I think Johnny Weaver did this. Was this one of the shows Weaver did?
I think so. Yeah.
Who was ever on the call? They both had more than Gordon was passing them the bottle before this, man, because they were slurring words and tripping over things left and right. We get some interesting.
Bob Caudle, Johnny Weaver. There you go.
We get some interesting commentating duos throughout this journey here tonight. Yeah, just like for what it is great. And it's the first of many times in our discussion tonight we will talk about Arn Anderson's Spinebuster, because Ricky Morton hits the ropes, and those ropes, you can hear them clacking, like they're like kind of snapping and hitting the cage. So it gives it this really cool sound. Ricky Morton hits it, makes the mistake of running right into that Spinebuster, man. I mean, it's gotten to the point where people's taste in wrestling from a modern perspective, like I could see some people that just kind of like modern wrestling watching this and not enjoying it. It is like a lot different than what we are used to today. But for me, I was doing the patented Oracle fist pump numerous times throughout this. I enjoyed myself greatly. They whiff the finish a little bit. Robert kind of misses the drop kick, so the finish looks kind of bad. But in the immortal words of Jimmy King, the audience liked it, so who cares?
Yeah, to your point about the modern audience, this match has become like increasingly polarizing. And I think the reason for that, Oracle, is this is not afraid to get some heat. They go heavy on heat here. I don't know how long this went, but I'd say 80% of it is Anderson heat. And that popped me. I'm intrigued what you thought of the structure of this match, which is always very, very interesting.
Oh yeah, I prefer this over. It didn't bother me as much. There were some people who were really critical of it. A vocal minority, I will say. But the Rockers Rose Summers Christmas cage match from '86, where it's just Buddy and Doug getting their asses kicked for like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
That was heavily criticized for being just an entire face shine.
Mm-hmm.
I prefer this style where you get an early face shine and then you just get big old heat. My biggest issue with basically the 80s in general is that 90% of finishes in the 80s fucking suck. So like that's the biggest problem with the 80s in general, is that most of the finishes aren't really good, and like they're always kind of abrupt. Not that they should go out and have like 17 near falls or anything, but it's just sometimes the match just kind of ends on a DQ or count out, or in this case is flubbed a little bit. But yeah, this match was just tremendous. I mean, note Arn early like comes in, and I just love how he like pretty quickly they establish the cage, and Arn gets his head rammed in there a few times. His selling of it is amazing. Arn was tremendous at showing ass and feeding and bumping early on and face shines.
He had one too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Arn had a wagon, man.
Right. Sorry, I got distracted by the beauty of Julia here on NXT. Anyways, but
NXT. I was wondering. You looked up and kind of gazed in awe. I was like, "What's happening?" It was Julia. Okay. All
Dude,
right.
she's like this. Not even trying to be lecherous. She's like gorgeous, like strikingly so.
Yeah, pretty woman. But
anyway, back to
Arn Anderson.
So Robert Gibson gets his leg worked over, which popped me huge because like they work over Robert's leg for like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then of course Ricky comes in, and Ricky is just, incredible blade job. He's getting the shit kicked out of him. There was a part in the match where like Ole, like just being a miserable bastard, he's got like his fist, he's got like his forearm and Ricky's in the back of Ricky's head, and he's like just like rubbing his face into the mat and cage and shit, and just like, and Ole's hair, like his fucking like is like everywhere and shit, and he's got
he looks like such an asshole. God, man.
Yeah, the finish is kind of a typical rock and roll finish. I prefer when they like really get like a couple of minutes of drop kicks and shit and all the double teams, and then they kind of get with the big ending there. But this one was a little bit flub, but I did love the shot of the camera in the aisleway after the.
Oh yeah, with the silhouette of like the people.
Yeah, that was fucking awesome. But yeah, just a great match. Like makes me want to go back and watch just all those fucking rock and roll tags and like.
Yeah, the heat, man.
Yeah,
people are just electric.
Oracle. Quick question for you, and then a question for the group. Ole Anderson, Dwayne Johnson, both known as The Rock. Who is the third guy known as The Rock?
Don Morocco.
Hell yeah, brother. And then for the group here, we were just talking, like, I think Bob brought it up first, the idea of, like, it's still a tag match in a cage, and, like, there's a heat segment in this match. When did the expectations and sentiment surrounding cage matches change to where it has to be someone jumps off the top of the cage and They fight for the door. Is that during the Hogan era?
Well, the WWF certainly, the door element, the WWF was the escape promotion, right?
Yeah.
That was there. And as far as I know, I mean, I think that the escape thing was born from guys not wanting to do jobs, I think. I'm pretty sure of that. In fact, I'm pretty sure that's where it traces back to in New York. The stunt element, I think, is complicated. Obviously, snooker is, a famous one, but I think the biggest issue the cage match has had is the cell. The cell kind of hurt the cage match, right? Because as soon as the cell became what it became, unless we forget it became that on night one with the Bad Blood match, I think the cage match kind of got like demoted with that, and I think it lost a certain power. I don't know. That's just my take on it.
Yeah, and for speaking just from the WWF perspective, also they fucked up in that after they introduced the cell, the cage for cage matches is still chain link fence. Yeah. They kept that fucking big blue, man. I know the guys hated working in it. I don't give a shit. That's your job. You signed up for it. I want to be entertained. Give me the big blue back, baby. But yeah, that all makes sense. I honestly didn't have an answer. I was just curious. Like,
well, I have good news for you, Alex. The lads brought back the cage match a couple weeks ago. They got Solo Sikoa on the case. We're going to be fine. We're entering a new golden age of cage matches, so don't worry about it, okay?
I tuned into that right at this moment where he was doing something very stupid, and then I texted y'all. I was like, this sucks, or Solo sucks. And you guys were both like, actually, this match has been really good, so I need to go back and revisit that.
It was so mean that you texted on like he's one good match of the year. All right. Man, there's a great moment in this early where Robert Gibson's like doing stick and move on Oli, and each time he moves, Oli's like this piece of shit. She's so like mad about it and cranky. God, he's awesome. Of course, when it was Oli and Arn had to do a lot of the heavy lifting on the Shine, right? Because Oli had no interest in that. There's a famous story from the Philly match with Dusty and the Road Warriors where Arn was infuriated because Oli was infuriated because Rick and Arn were just not ending the Shine. Because the crowd was so hot. They were like, they like it. Let's keep going. And Oli was like, no, just come off. Let's grab an arm and let's slow this thing down. And I think you kind of see Arn has to do a lot of that part. With Tully, it's very different, of course. But yeah, this match is almost entirely heat. And it kind of, if it happened now, we would say it, quote, subverts expectations. I don't think they actually had any interest in doing that then. This was just kind of the match they settled on having, and it was the one they had. And it worked treat on this crowd. But it is different to like the traditional formula. They lead with heat on Robert. Then once they get to heat on Ricky, they don't build to the hot tag. They go to the finish, right? So it's a really interesting match in that way. So yeah, interesting match. I love the cut off of Gibson going for the high knee in the corner and missing and hitting the cage. Great deal on that. But a tremendous deal. And also kind of a showcase of like when you hear announcers say the Anderson style of cutting the ring off, you get a real good look at that with Arnold over here, right? That classical style from yesteryear. Okay. Now, the story goes that the lads felt in mid to late 88, they felt underpaid in Crockett. I know that Tully Blanchard had other issues and was like banned from the private jet or something for saying mean things about Dusty. And of course, they headed to the World Wrestling Federation. They dropped the NWA tag straps to the Midnights, which is like a famous like mini feud to end their run. Check out, if you've not seen any of that stuff, even if you don't watch the match, check out the promos to set up Brainbusters versus Midnight Express, because it is literally a heel thing where they just use it to flip the Midnight. It's tremendous stuff. Incredible stuff. Purely done on the skill of just Cornette as a promo, Tully and Arn as everything, and the respect the audience has in the Midnight Express. So that's the way they wrap up their run, and they head to the WWF, where they are. I said this to someone who obviously wasn't watching in real time, but they are incredibly aggressively weird in the World Wrestling Federation.
Yes.
I don't even mean that in like a negative way, because I think they have a lot of good matches. And actually, considering how short the run is, I think it kind of overachieves in ring.
Breaking news.
Yes.
Stephanie Vaquer, I believe, has challenged the winner of Julia and
wow.
She's Roxanne. That's. I mean, I have it on mute, so I couldn't tell, but I think that was what I gathered from that.
Oh, she's awesome. So that's cool.
Sorry, continue.
No, you're fine. Absolutely. Breaking news, bro. I'm with you. Stephanie Vaquer's great. Also trained by Loki. Anyway, so they dropped the belts to the Midnight.
Don't worry.
Yeah, they went to the WWF. Vince didn't seem to see a great deal of personality in Arn and Tully. one of the issues also that Arn's talked about is like them two with Bobby Heenan is like a dream team vibe.
Yeah.
But this is at the point where Bobby is doing a lot less on the road. So it didn't quite, even though it's a cool visual looking back, it didn't become what it could have become, right? Like, because Bobby's at this point kind of moving into a different point of his career, which is fine, of course. So we're about to head to WWF. Before we do, though, other matches to call out from Act 1. So anything pre-World Wrestling Federation, I've got a couple here. The two TV tags with Barry and Lex, the Clash one, and then when they get the belts back, both tremendous matches. The first War Games, of course. He and Tully versus the Fantastics in 86 Crockett Cup. Those are the ones that I circled immediately. Any other matches to call out from pre-WWF, fellas?
I will second the War Games, and this is just going to be a blanket statement for the rest of time. Arn Anderson is the greatest worker in War Games history. If there's a match that he's in that's a War Games match, you should watch it just for him. Yeah. No one ever quite understood how to work that match like that dude did, and he is outstanding in every outing. Not to say that all the ones he had, the ones that made tape at least, were like blow away 5-star matches. He was in the Dangerous Alliance one though, which is a 5-star classic. But he is just, for there not being any groundwork before that match, like you watched the first War Games, right? Which I think now isn't even on the network. It's on the War Games DVD and Blu-ray, but there was no model to follow, and if you watch his performance match, it feels like someone had 20 years of those matches to study to pick and choose the best things to take from it.
And to that point, Alex, he's the best War Games worker ever, but the way he got that match over as a promo, the way he would talk about the idea of War Games and what that meant to a wrestler's career, I mean, huge part in establishing the lore of that match, no doubt about it.
And also a moment I always think of about Arn, this is just kind of the blanket for War Games. The War Games in 96, where it was Arn, Flair, Sting, and Luger against the NWO. It's like one of the only time, I'm literally getting goosebumps like thinking about it because I can see it in my head. It's one of the only times you'll see Arn like coming through the curtain like the Ultimate Warrior, where he's just like getting the crowd fucking hyped up because he knows like what's at stake here, and he knows that he's going to war. God damn, I love me some Arn Anderson.
That's the stuff that you can't teach,
Yeah,
that's an instinct. That's a feel. The way he would make those matches feel, the way he would enter the ring, the caution. There's a great story about War Games while we're talking about this. Famously, Arn would always open, right? He and Dusty would open the first, chunk of War Games matches, because of course the second year they do War Games, they do it like across the country, which is a choice, and the lad's foreheads never recovered. But one night Arn got to come in last, and the story goes that he came in and he hit all of the Arns, like the DDT, the spine bust, and the place was rocking. And as soon as he walked back through the curtain, Dusty said, "You're back in at number 1 with me tomorrow on." I think that speaks to Dusty being hilarious, and secondly, how great he was at leading those matches. So yeah, I agree completely. Any others that come to mind, folks, for pre-WWF Arn Anderson?
I'm going to be honest with you.
Please do.
85 through 88, Crockett.
Oh.
Granted, I've seen some, but not a whole lot. But I've seen enough. I've read enough reviews and seen enough recommendations that if you type in Arn Anderson 1986, 85, 87, 88, it's going to be good. And there's probably 100 matches. I'm not even exaggerating. Crockett from 85 to 88 might be the best in-ring promotion in the history of wrestling that we have on tape. So,
we need more of that type.
That's from my preference of style too. I mean, if that's
of course.
But I think you could literally type in any Arn Tully tag, Arn Oli tag, Arn TV title match, and it's probably going to be at least decent to good. I think he's that.
Who does he and
that
Tully
special of a talent?
Who do they work? Bash 88 is Nikita and Sting, I want to say.
I've seen that. Yeah.
I like that match.
The crowd is fucking insane for that.
Yeah, that's another one. I'm trying to think if there's any, because you are right. Like a lot of the Arn stuff, when we do this segment, it's like just watch WCW TV and it'll pop up and have a good match at some point. Right?
Oh, yeah. And that's the same for the that's the same. You know, I'll be able to be a little bit more selective because I'm more familiar with his '90s work. But I mean, just in any era of Arn, pretty much through '95, he might be the best worker in the entire company in '95. You know, I mean, he's like 95 is not a good year.
It's not, but he's steady, super steady.
Yeah.
And Flair's, all of Flair's stuff that almost is part of the story for the final match that we cover here, right? And he misses a lot of the year too. But any other matches call out, fellas, before we move to the WWF? All right, fair, makes sense to me. Well, they arrive in October 1988. There was brief talk, one of the great wrestling what-ifs. There was brief talk of Flair going with them, which is a fascinating thing to kick around. I have no idea what that does to... I mean, Crockett was already, trending one way, but then I guess Ted wouldn't buy the company, I don't think, at that point. I honestly think it was that big of a deal. If Flair had gone, would Ted have even bought Jim Crockett Promotions? I don't know.
They came in '88, and they were just there for like a year, right?
Yeah, they were there for
a year, yeah.
October '88, and then they wrap up in like December '89.
Yeah, and Arn was at Survivor Series '89 and the main event, and that was it.
Of course, yeah. So,
October '88.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to get my timeline straight here.
You're good. But yes, it was Flair stayed, and eventually they flipped, which is a weird thing that happened with time. But nonetheless, we are at January 23rd, 1989. We're at Madison Square Garden. God Almighty, this is one of those just matches. I could watch this match. I reckon I've genuinely seen this match like 20 times. Like it's just it's
I believe the great Rod Trongard is on commentary.
Hell yeah,
he's
Rod Trongard and Lord Alfred Hayes.
Yes, and Lord Alfred Hayes.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty.
That's very good, by the way. Very good.
Rod Trongard refers to Earl Hebner as Hebner. Hebner in the ring now.
Dude.
Hebner didn't say it.
I always forget he was in Crockett forever and was like one of their senior refs. He reffed the cage match that we just talked about.
Lord Alfred Hayes promises that this will be a display of great tag teamship, which I generally yelled at.
He also calls repeedly Tully Blanchard, and Blanchard, but he just keeps saying that over and over again.
The way he would call heels was so weird. Like, he would have like an affinity for them, but like not really. It was just fascinating. What am I?
And a double drop kick from the Rockers, and a second double drop kick.
Dude, we had this on the Hennig episode where we had Ron Trongard calling a Rockers match from the AWA. He does learn here because the first few times he talks about Shawn Michaels, but then the last time he can't help himself. And now Shawn Michael into the ring.
Tremendous stuff. Now, this is a kind of famous rivalry, feels strong, but a pairing, right? They have a handful of really, really celebrated house show matches. For those of you who don't know, house shows, sometimes maybe they have a 2 out of 3 falls match even, don't they? I want to say, which is a little bit hurried, but it's still worth watching. The thing with house shows, and this is, again, one of those things that's kind of hard to capture when you're 4 dumb fucks doing a show like this, but house shows were the industry then. Like, the whole point of your TV was to drive people to live events. Now, of course, pay-per-view is coming in and is a huge deal by this point, don't be wrong.
Yeah.
But it's not like, this is like a big part of the business, what they're doing here. So it's not like just like they're doing what a house show now is very different to what it was in 1989 is my point, right? It was a very, very different thing. The TV would be there to fuel your live events. It was a live event industry. Now it is ready for this, content industry, as we know.
The problem with wrestlers from this era is that they're dumb. Like Jake Roberts will say shit like, we're on the road 340 days a year. It's like, no, you weren't. But when you say that, it kills, like it takes oomph out of the fact that you guys legitimately worked like 4 to 5 nights a week, dude. Like, so just say what you actually did and don't embellish that number. And it still is very like telling of the time. Yeah, it's what you're saying of like TV wasn't the end goal. It was like, we do TV so that people will come to fucking Topeka, Kansas to watch Bad News Brown and Jake Roberts wrestle.
That's obviously the 90s is where that like flips. And now we've gone we're now trending towards a time where there is no such thing as a house show. Like that's where we're headed towards. Like there's still some holdover there, but let's be honest, dude. 10 years, like they'll do European tours and stuff, but they're not house shows.
Matches like this and footage like this is what I think you and I, Noracle as well, live for nowadays. Of like the idea that arenas would just have in-house cameras that they recorded these matches for to show on local syndication. That just sounds crazy saying it.
Yeah, because the MSG stuff, MSG network, right? You'd see this stuff, which is where it existed, I should say. And the Boston, what was the network that would show the Boston Garden stuff?
NESN.
Yeah.
Thank you. Which gets one of these matches, one of the Rockers Ramos matches. So that just to give you some context. But yeah, there's a handful of these matches that are super celebrated. Arn Anderson said, and again, he may have just been like maintaining a feud with the Rock and Roll Express for kayfabe's sake. I don't fucking know. He said the Rockers were like mechanically on a different level, which, to be fair, like I can kind of see it, right? How fluid they are. I mean, Ricky Morton was a great worker as a babyface. There's his emotion he's selling, but they can do obviously athletically a lot of different stuff with Jannetty and Sean that is on full display here. You also get a great contrast out the gate in terms of the Oli team, the Tully team, because they go heavy on the Shine here. Oracle, what did you make of this one?
Oh yeah, this is a blast. This whole feud's great. They, I mean, it's just Arn and Tully's totally different, as you pointed out. Like Tully is incredible at showing ass, and like he I think he does it here. I'm pretty sure he does it where he does like the tuck the tail between the legs cell or whatever.
Oh, it's on the outside after Arn takes Sean's head off.
Yeah. Like just incredible stuff. This face shine is like, it goes like 6 or 7 minutes, but it's awesome. Rod Trogard's like freaking out on commentary because he loves the Rockers because he called them AWA. Yeah, this is a total blast. My favorite part of the whole thing is the finish. I think the finish is fucking awesome. With Arn, like he's like pulling onto the tassel at the
Brilliant
end.
finish.
What a just another example of Arn just like being so savvy, just like so many clever touches, so many intricate little things that he does that is so unique and important. He could be a showman and also just be like a brilliant, just like ring general, and that's a worker's term. I mean, there's no such thing as a ring general, but I mean, he amplified that, with the things that he did, like ring positioning, and being in the perfect spot. I can't remember if it was. I think it was in the cage match. Just to go back to that, there was a part where, or maybe it was this match, where he brilliantly sets up. He gets punched or something, and he brilliantly sets up for like a DDT or something.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You might be know what I'm talking. It was either the cage match or this match.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
He does it in a very believable way. Sometimes like guys, just his placement, his ring positioning, how he uses the ring. That like, it's here I go on a tangent again, but just thinking about that finish and him pulling on the tassel for the finish, tripping, doing the leg trip and then pulling on the tassel, just reminds me of how he just is in the right place at the right time. And literally 95% of his matches, he never is. He's not a guy. It helps that he's not going to go out and do like corkscrew planchas and take spike pile drivers or whatever or spike ranas or whatever. But his ability to be in the right place at the right time, believably, and make sense of it all. It's pretty amazing to watch, honestly. Like it might sound silly to gush about him this way, but like it's amazing how, in terms of just how little he flubbed things, and like rarely do I think of an instance where Arn makes a physical mistake in a match, whether it be a miscommunication or not knowing where he's supposed to be in a match. He knew exactly where he's supposed to be. He knows how to do things and make it work, and can do it quickly and with a lot of wit, and just, I don't know. Again, I'm being broad stroke here, but yeah, this match is super fun, really good. But just thinking about how cerebral of a wrestler Arn is.
There's some overlap there with our conversation on, I mean, obviously a lesser, but when we did the Bobby Roode show, we talked about it, right? Like a guy who's like, you kind of don't notice how he's just always where he needs to be. Like, to your point about the tassel finish, for those of you that haven't seen it, it's the old finish where a guy goes suplex and the guy hooks the foot and holds the foot down. Now, the problem with that is the referee has to be in a perfect position, otherwise he's going to kind of bury him because the guy's foot is going to be under the rope. The way that Arn does this, his foot is really not under the rope. The tassel is. So it's like, it makes the referee look better too, right? It protects everyone. It's just like, it's a small thing, but yeah, it's very, very smart for sure. Tully Blanchard is an all-time great heel. My goodness. All-time. Complete arsehole. Tremendous. Alex, what did you make of our trip to the Garden here?
Well, welcome back to Madison Square Garden. 23,000 in attendance here. I don't know why that's my impression of Alfred Hayes, but it always starts with so take from that what you will. An interesting dynamic, and I stepped away for a second, so if I'm repeating any Oracle's points or stuff y'all talked about so far, do forgive me. The very, very rarely, seldom seen flipping of the tag behind the ref's back where the baby faces do it, where the ref's dealing with the heel, and so Sean and Marty switch places, and then Hebner's like, what the fuck? And what I love is, and this would work, is that Sean points to the crowd and is like, did we tag? And the crowd's like, yeah. And so, it's you don't see that often, Yeah,
it's the inverse,
yeah. And so that was something to take note of. Sean eats a spine buster, his life's depending on making this thing look like $1 million. We talked about this in the AWA 6-man that we did in the Henning episode. He's an unfortunate person, but god damn, boys, Marty Jannetty was a hell of a pro wrestler, dude. When he gets in on the hot tag,
good God,
when he gets in on the hot tag and he's pumping his elbows and knees, throwing those punches and shit, it's outstanding. Tully and Sean have something to prove here because they're doing sequences like they're wrestling at Best of the Best 4. Like there's this moment where Tully goes for the slingshot suplex, but then Sean shoots over and gives him the O'Connor roll. And then in the closing frame of the match, they do that spot Sean loves so much where he's underneath and bridges up with Tully on top of him. I can't remember if I read this at one point somewhere or it was just something I came up with in my brain, but one of my favorite what if theories, stick with me here. What if Tully Blanchard came into the WWF and was given the $1 Million Man gimmick instead of Ted DiBiase?
You'd have put up crazy numbers with that, dude.
And then
that was kind of his gimmick anyway, just less overt, right?
And it happens a bit earlier, so there's a slot in the Four Horsemen that's left open that Crockett poaches the handsome half-breed Gino Hernandez and brings him into the Four Horsemen. Yeah. So the idea of switching those two, imagine those two plays being made is something I've always thought about, because you watch this here and Oracle called it out, this little strut away from the action, man, you can't tell me, I know he's a little shorter, but you can't tell me that Tully Blanchard and Hulk Hogan couldn't have had some magic in the ring, man.
Oh yeah.
And
and it should be noted, Alex, for anyone who's not aware, Tully was not a career tag guy. He was a big deal as a singles before he was teaming with Arn. So that is not a crazy thing.
I've heard he had a match with Magnum TA at some point.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And you got to think, back when he first got big and his dad's promotion down in Southwest, he was I think he was the number one baby face and then turned heel or something. And he had a big feud with Gino Hernandez. They were a tag team.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then just thinking of Tully top heel in the WWF wrestling babyface Savage, how good that would be. It's crazy what if things we could have had. The visual of Tully and Arn with Bobby Heenan is awesome, like we talked about. The being in the Heenan family was really cool. There is, I think this is the idea with the thing Don Callis does now is like it's supposed to be like a modern version of the Heenan family, right? Where he has like this extended faction.
I think so, yeah.
Except the Heenan family was cool, and it's funny to look back on it, and it was like that Survivor Series team I mentioned that blew my mind was Haku, Andre the Giant, Arn Anderson, and Tully Blanchard. What a collection of humanity that was. But here, I could see where Vince would be like, because they're doing Tully and Arn, they're wrestling like it's good, but it always looked kind of weird in the WWF ring. Yeah. Great call out in the comments. I think that was the first thought I had, given this was 1989. I was like, oh, dude, this is kind of like a dream match from the AWA's top tag team and two guys from the NWA. So this is a lot of fun. My notes mostly consist of like the comedic aspects, Blanchard and stuff like that, because this match is going to be good. This is the only match where we get Aloha Arn, where he is fending off a sunset flip, like Aloha. Yeah,
he goes into a tag, right? He drops into a tag.
And he manages to scurry all the way back across the ring and then fall down and tag him in. It's good shit. Did they ever wrestle Demolition?
Yeah, those matches are really good, dude. You got room for a treat.
I could see that.
There's a famous house show one, but there's like a couple set on last main event ones. They're really good.
All right, well, let's calm down with the Tessa Blanchard praise there.
That was not in response to me, by the way. I was
good shit, man. A lot of fun. Rockers were a hell of a team. This is kind of like I brought this up in the Jared episode. It's very rare now that I can watch Shawn matches and not get annoyed. And like any stuff with the Rockers, I'm just like, fuck yeah, dude, more of this. So high praise.
So good, dude. Like I'm a Brett guy.
Great hair.
Like tag team for tag team. I've got Shawn taking that particular category, unfortunately.
Oh yeah, Rockers and Barbarian and Ming is like one of the all-time WrestleMania openers. That match fucking rules.
It's so awesome. Even in the heat, once they cut the Rockers off, the Brainbusters are like more than happy to show ass and bump. They don't give a shit, dude. They're just like, that's their heat. They don't care. They'll get it back, especially on this finish. They totally do. By the way, at one point, Lord Alfred says, while they haven't scored, the Brainbusters have, quote, tried lots of good moves. False.
They won the belts one time, correct? Because there's like pictures of them with the belts.
They beat they beat Demolition. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna have to seek this out because this is like one of those things that's always like gets flubbed in my head. So this is where Tully failed the drug test, and this was essentially the end of Tully Blanchard as a pro wrestler. This run, correct?
Yeah, which is like, it worked out with the best, and he got his life in order. But what the hell, man? What an insane thing to actually say, and it's true. Like, look how good he is in this match. It's outrageous.
And just think about the people that were ping ponging at that point. You're telling me they couldn't find a spot for him? He did go on to have allegedly one of the worst matches in wrestling history, where he wrestled a 60-minute draw with Shane Douglas in, I think, Kissimmee, Florida, that the crowd like nearly rioted for. So bad. I don't know if it exists anywhere on film.
I don't think it does. I don't think so. I could be wrong. Bobby, you look very sad. What do you think of the match?
I liked it a lot. I'd seen the Saturday Night's main event match. I think it's only like 8 minutes, which and this one is it's a lot more entertaining. Especially all of the Arn segments with Shawn, just tremendous stuff. And then, again, Alex we pointed out last time we did one of these, but building the hot tag to Marty, and he just comes in and he is just ridiculous, man. And that's something in the 1993 stuff I'm still seeing a little bit, but he's starting to be phased out a little bit because he's got issues. Just tremendous stuff. I'd never seen this. I was very fired up to hear Rod Trongard like everyone else. Great stuff. I'm glad that we picked this because I don't know that I ever would have seen it otherwise. It's been on the WWE YouTube for like 11 years.
Yeah, it's quietly a pretty famous match, but because it wasn't on like SummerSlam or a pay-per-view, people it falls through the cracks for whatever reason.
Well, because I saw the date and I'm like, oh, it's probably at the Rumble, and then
again, it was just a different time in the WWF, right? Anything can happen in the WWF, but this was a different time, and Just,
You also said the Heart
storytelling.
Foundation match was kind of underwhelming.
It's good. It's just, I'll put it to you this way, Alex. If you know going in, Dave gave it 2, you'll actually enjoy it a lot because it will exceed those expectations. But if you just see on paper, Brett and Tully, Jim and Brett, like Arn and Tully, Jim and Brett, you'll be like locked in. And it isn't quite what you'd hope it'd be. But it's good. It's a good match. And it's like the opener of SummerSlam, so they have a good crowd for it too. So the storytelling in wrestling in matches is like a whole thing now that I think people kind of have turned into a different monster. Storytelling in a wrestling match. Arn Anderson, to be an asshole, turns around on the apron and punches Marty Jannetty, who's standing on the apron doing nothing.
Mm-hmm.
He then bows to ringside, points to his head, and turns around and immediately gets punched in the face by Marty Jannetty. That there is like a complete fool in a match, right? He took a cheap shot because he's a prick, and he paid the price because he's not as smart as he thinks he is. Wrestling. Easy. Like, that's so on Anderson. Like, and it's the first minute of the match. Like, they do a lot of intricate stuff, but that sums up him. Yeah. Awesome match. So rewatchable. If you haven't seen any of these matches, I would imagine, especially if you're a young fan, this would be the one that you'd probably like the most. It's just heavy on the shine. The rockers are so fluid. Also, obviously, Sean's like, there's an awareness there, obviously, of what he would end up becoming, for better or worse, Alex.
Yeah.
But these are the games we play. So, tremendous stuff. And as we said, he would leave at the end of 1989, famously. Now, what have I got here? I've got this stuff somewhere here. Tully, of course, as you mentioned, Alex, fouling the allegedly, I should say. I think he still fights the calls on this. Fighting the cocaine drug test failure, alleged, which cost him his run because WCW was owned by Turner and they didn't want that PR, which again is like hilarious considering all the wrestlers that were working at both places and so on and so forth. But that's what happened. And famously, Jim Herd slashed Arn's deal because of it, which is awful and legitimately affected their friendship for many years. Arn got like half the money because he wasn't coming back as part of the team, which makes his effort in the match we're about to talk about kind of absurd, to be honest, because he's so switched on and so spirited in this match. Famously is a bit strong, but memorably, I should say, for those of you that are losers, Arn like ended his WWF run team with Haku because Tully couldn't make the towns. And he said that if he could have changed one thing about his career, it would have been that he could do a real tag run with Haku, which is like, dude,
interesting.
That opens up a world of possibilities. The Meng AA team in World Championship Wrestling could have been, and they're in the stud stable together. So it wasn't even like something that was impossible. It was like kind of right in front of us. But that's awesome. So that's a cool deal. And then we land back here in World Championship Wrestling. We are on January 2nd, 1982. That was the taping day. It aired on January 12th, Power Hour. Jim Ross and Jim Cornette on the call, with the former somehow being considerably more problematic than the latter. This is for the world's television title because, of course, it is. Greg Muta is the champion. Arn Anderson is the challenger. Arn Anderson is a babyface now. As Oracle mentioned earlier, we get that role reversal. He's back. The Horsemen are babyfaces. We're about 2 months, maybe a month out from one of the worst booking decisions of World Championship Wrestling's history, and that's saying something. But this is a moment in time with Arn as a triumphant babyface, and the people are locked in, brother. This is a hell of a time. Not a classic match, but a really fun combination of talent here. Bobby, what did you make of this one? I'm assuming you hadn't seen it.
I had not. Yeah, it kind of reminded me of the first one that we watched in a way with Ron Garvin. You know, not so much the style of the match, but just like, you know, 2 guys who were just out there kind of having a little TV main event. And it was good. I mean, you know, there's not a ton to it until like the finishing stretch. But yeah, I mean, it's good. It's entertaining. Like, it's 2 guys that I enjoy watching whenever, you know, I've come across them. And, you know, this is more of that.
It's interesting. I remember this match being like talked about a lot because it's an Arn. He wins the title and it's a very famous, you know, significant opponent.
It's also his comeback match at WCW. I mean, he literally, it was like his first or second. It was like one of his first few matches back. And like, this might be, in fact, it might be. Is it his first match back? Like, he might have wrestled 2 matches before.
He may have done like an enhancement match, but like basically. And what was interesting about Oracle, because clearly you see it the same way. Like, before I looked at it, this had like 2 ratings on Cage Match or 3 ratings, and I was like, it's so interesting how some matches get like become part of like modern fan lore to watch, and this is just No one talks about this anymore. It was definitely a thing people talked about before. But this is an interesting match in the sense that it like entirely delivers on what you imagine it to be without actually like being a especially epic or great match. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's just a good match, but it entirely delivers on what you imagine Arn Anderson as the Great Muta being. It's a it's an interesting one, Alex. What did you make of this?
Yeah, Arn working like strictly good guy is crazy. It's and it speaks to how good he is. That Oracle talked about this already. You know, he was kind of like the Mike Mizanin of his day, where nothing really changed between his babyface and heel antics. So, this is excellent, and it's what you said. It's if you see this on paper and you watch it, you're like, "Fuck yeah, that was Arn Anderson and the Great Muta locking up and going at it." Like with Arn's, it's just the brilliance of it. He does the same things, but it's just in a little bit different shade
context.
So people go like, "Woo, yay!"
Yeah.
Power drive elbow. That's I joked about low key earlier, but Great Muta, his power drive elbow. I think we've talked about this before in here, but that is one of the rare examples of a guy who did a wrestling move that people have tried to, and no one's ever been able to do it like he did it. Like, and it's. I've seen guys like indie fucks do it, and they just look like they're spazzing. And like, there's something. If I tried to do it, I'd look like I was having a seizure. But like, the way he just kind of like snaps into it is fucking nuts. And Low Key did it. Joe did it. There's some other indie guy that day that tried it too. But it's just crazy.
Holly did it sometimes too, actually.
Oh yeah,
that's pretty cool.
You did mention JR. He's on one on commentary in this match, man. He's dropping, he's dropping some fairly problematic vernacular, but then also he just starts shooting on the World Wrestling Federation for no reason. He's like talking about like, I don't know if he's like saying that Arn's not in good shape, like visually, but he's like, here it's not about posing, it's not about who comes out with an animal. This is the NWA, and it's okay, dude.
He loved doing that deal, bro. And then there he was at WrestleMania 9, dressed like a dipshit.
And Cornette is just, say what you will about Jim Cornette. He's quicker than a hiccup.
Quick,
And he's just shredding Ross this whole match. And then Ross gets him one time, and it's good too. They're talking about the magazine. I forget what the WCW magazine was called. And Cornette's like, yeah, I'm in the newest one. I got the centerfold. And Jim Ross goes just immediately, yeah, it's a picture suitable for darts. And then Cornette just, he makes some kind of noise in response to it. But that, and I legitimately laughed out loud when they're brawling around the ring. And Jim Ross goes, is that Bob Newhart? And Cornette goes, no, it's Bill Apter.
Yeah, they did have good chemistry as an announce team, I must say. They did, definitely.
If you can believe it, we get another beautiful spine buster. And the DDT here is unbelievable.
Yep. Yes.
You get a great near fall off it, too.
Yeah, the feed into it's tremendous, too. Tremendous.
That's, we already talked about, Arn wasn't the kind of guy that you had 20-minute finishes and 32 counts, but like they're the false finish here of Arn when he gets whacked by not Buzz Sawyer but the Dragon Master, was that his name? Yeah,
hilarious wrestler.
The crowd bites on that. They think that's it, so when Arn kicks out they legitimately go nuts. And for Jim Ross just burying himself in massive trench in this match, we still get the classic like Jim Ross celebration when Arn ends in the win.
Of course.
So, yeah, this is it's hard to call anything a hidden gem anymore these days. But like great example is that Owen Vader match we watched on Friday. It's like you see that on paper, you think this could probably be good, and you watch it, you're like, that was fucking awesome. And that's what this match is.
Absolutely. I'm with you entirely. The timing, Oracle, you've talked about kind of timing and positioning. His timing on getting the knees up on the moonsault always pops me because he plays dead until like the very last split second. One of the highlights, the finishing stretch of this is like kind of like a modern one. It's pretty sweet, actually. What did you?
Tremendous.
Yeah.
The first half of the match is kind of standard. It's good. It's Arn and Muta. Muta's hitting his stuff. Arn's playing to the crowd a little bit, being a baby face. But my God, that finishing stretch. Excuse me, sorry. Buzz Sawyer screaming at the top of his lungs at ringside, probably drugged out of his fucking mind. Just constantly screaming.
Oh,
Buzz Sawyer got him.
yeah, look at the grin on Oracle's face. Just talking about Buzz Sawyer having the time of his life. Oh, way to go out. He'll be back, folks. Just any second here.
Yep.
He's back. He's back.
Am I back?
He's back.
What was the last thing I said? Something about Buzz Sawyer being drugged out of his mind?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Sorry, there's storms coming through. This could be a rocky road at the end here.
Go for it,
this finishing stretch, man, the near fall after the interference, knees on the moonsault, the feed, and then the DDT, just tremendous stuff. Like I hadn't seen this match in probably 10 years, maybe more. And I'd forgotten how awesome the last 3 or 4 minutes are.
Exciting.
It's tremendous. The pop on that, god damn, that DDT is great. Arn has the second best DDT ever. The only one who has it better is Jake.
Oh, if we can say Alexa Bliss.
Arn's DDT is Arn's DDT is incredible. But yeah, just an awesome finish. Of course, you get the post-match interview where JR shakes Arn's hand and congratulates him. But yeah, just tremendous stuff here. And then of course, the Horsemen turn on Sting 3 weeks later, and
they do talk about he refers to Sting as a Four Horsemen. It's like, oh, Steve Borden, you dumb son of a bitch, you hadn't learned yet.
Yeah, I don't know, man. There are very few old booking decisions that, especially I didn't live through this, but I just think it's the dumbest thing imaginable.
I believe is it the same show on that Clash, or is it a TV? Maybe it's a Saturday night or worldwide, where the Horsemen are in a 6-man against JTEX, and the crowd is absolutely molten.
It's Power Hour. It's Power Hour 6-man tag. It is unbelievable, folks. Go check that one out. It's actually. It's a far better match than what we just talked about, and we like that match. But we wanted to do a singles, but it's outrageously good.
Amazing.
Yeah, incredible match. But yeah, this is a hell of a time. At one point, Muta puts on a kind of cattle mutilation.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
And Cornette declares it to be another one of those Japanese submission moves.
That's he busted that out too in the what's the Starrcade where it's the point-based tournament?
90, right?
Wouldn't it be 89, right? Or was it 90? I don't know. I'm forgetting.
Oh, yes. 89 is the point-based one. 90 is the international tag tournament or whatever.
So it would be right before this
89,
match.
89 is right.
It'd be right before this match, yeah.
Yeah, because I remember being a big Bryan Danielson mark in high school and college and watching that Starrcade. The Muta Sting match is on that Starrcade DVD set, and when Muta did the cattle mutilation, I literally was just I was like, that's Brian's move.
We should call out he does that deal where he hooks the arm when he does a body slam. You know that deal where he works someone's arm? It's always fun. He does that here, which to your point, everyone said it kind of. He would just switch baby and heel, and he would just do a lot of the same stuff. He'd die in the early part of the mat wrestling. He's dissecting the arm. He's just doing his thing.
That slam in at least 5 of the matches we covered. Yeah.
I think the most aggressively babyface thing he does here is when he fires those right hands. When he just and the place goes nuts because one of the things, and look, he's a babyface in the next match, and people always forget this because of the finish, but he's a babyface in the Flair match. The finish just switches them, and
brilliant.
I think there's a lesson in that the crowd just respected him so much that he could just be the enforcer and they would just rock with it. It happened a lot. And there's a lot of different matches where he's the babyface, even though you remember him a certain way. So, yep, tremendous stuff.
Part of the very strange relationship he has with pro wrestling, specifically the audience of his day, that the Road Warriors were the heroes, but it was Arn commanded respect in this over the top variety hours show, and people were okay, well, hold on now, take this guy seriously.
The match he has with Regal I think it is. He comes out for that match, and you just see people just standing up and doing the four, and it's like, but it's like such a like bloke response to this dude because like Arn's like really understated, right? He's just kind of just kind of growling at people, sort of very mildly, and the people are just like, hell yeah, Arn Anderson. See him standing up with the fours. It's like he got that reaction a lot, dude. Even when he was a heel, I mentioned that Alex Wright match earlier. The crowd wants him to win that match, even as the heel. Like they don't care, man. It's Arn Anderson. They want to see him do the spine buster.
Have you ever seen that clip, that famous like GIF of? It's the match he wrestled Hogan on Nitro, and like they were handing out like Hogan shit, and the guy like is sitting on the side of the hard cam, and he stands up on his chair, and he turns to the camera, rips the Hogan shirt, and he does this like so rebelliously.
If you were to do the top 10 WCW moments in the 90s, or especially the Nitro era, because at that point they're like aggressively trying to phase out the Horsemen, a lot of those moments will come from the Horseman country responding to the Horsemen in that way that's almost like in spite of the promotion, right? Some of those reactions, like, it's so cool, man. Like, there's a Flair tag, there's a Hogan tag, but they just said fuck Hulk Hogan. It's awesome.
It might be that match. Arn got a singles match with Hogan on Nitro, which he won, by the way.
Yeah.
It's just the clip of he gives Hogan the spine buster, and the place just goes fucking insane. Hogan, sandbags it like he's preparing for a hurricane, and Arn just fucking takes him down, and the crowd just goes fucking nuts.
Yeah, it's a very cool thing, definitely. In the later years, there's a couple moments where the Horsemen get to be heroes, and in those, in that area, it's a special thing. Arn is not in the match, but just nod if I'm right in this article, Slamboree 97 with Kevin Green and Roddy Piper, where Flair, is that right? Slamboree 97? Where Flair is like, for one time, he's like kind of positioned the way they always wanted him to be, and he gets this sort of triumphant. It's just a special thing and that's what a lot of people miss now when they compare AEW's popularity with like WCW. What they miss is WCW wasn't just a thing that came to be in 1989. It was traced back through NWA history and all that came with that. There's a lot more depth to it than just like Ted Turner started a wrestling promotion. Like, a lot of these fans were there with it back then. They were watching the War Games match with Dusty, and even way beyond that and before that. So it's a complicated thing.
What you're leaving out of the story is that prior to 1985, wrestling happened predominantly in VFW halls and Smoky Bingo halls.
I always forget that. Yeah. I'm thankful for reminding me that. I appreciate it. But
there's a series dropping on Netflix that I think is going to clear all that up for you. So I think.
Really? Okay, cool. All right. So. Other matches. So this,
it's called Monday Night Raw, debuting in January.
Yeah, you're right.
History's written by the winners, unfortunately.
Yeah. So, I guess we'll end this act like when Flair returns, because when Flair returns, naturally that like changes Arn's back in that kind of role, right? So, because there's a couple of years after this, obviously, where Flair goes back, as I mentioned earlier, they kind of go in opposite directions. The Horseman thing does not pan out long term, for reasons that we just discussed. So other matches call out. We already talked about War Games 92. We've covered the Dustin and Steamboat tag alongside Elizabethsko, which is an all-timer, and Lord Oracle is declared to be the greatest professional wrestling performance ever.
Which one?
The Larry and Arn versus Dustin and Steamboat
tag. Oh, yes.
Yep. The Power Hour 6-man we talked about. There's a Rockers tag in Boston. There's a March one back at the Garden.
March 1889, right?
That one might be the second one at the Garden. I think the Boston ones. Yeah, I think the Boston ones maybe January, like the loop before what we watched. Maybe I could be wrong on that. So, the Hart Foundation tag we talked about. Also, I don't know, you brought this one up, Alex. Some of the stuff with Doom, right?
Yes, I was going to say specifically the street fight at Starrcade 1990. Like that match.
Arn fucking fighting in jeans. Ugh.
Yeah, if you haven't seen that, it definitely warrants checking out. Because Barry's got like he's got like the Rambo bandana on, like he's going to war.
Yeah, the Starrcade and Havoc is the one with Flair versus Doom, correct?
Yes.
Havoc, yeah, okay.
When I was asking about the dates for their WWF run, the reason why is because something worth calling out here is that Arn Anderson wrestled Tom McGee on a match that was filmed at a Superstars of Wrestling taping, and I believe in Daytona Beach, of all places. I believe it only ever aired in syndication in France, and thanks to the wonderful advent of the internet, you can find it easily on YouTube right now. And I think it's one of 3 matches that Tom McGee had in the WWF that you can find. There's the Ted DiBiase match, this, and of course the infamous Bret Hart match. I watched this again today. I had seen it before. It's about 6 minutes long. Arn, like, when you watch it, knowing what we know, obviously, Arn works so hard, and it nails home, like, how good he was. It's not as good as the Bret match, but, like, man, Tom McGee, God bless him, he seemed like a good dude, but, like, he's like, it's just not there, brother.
Clumsy, yeah.
Yeah, and Arn is doing everything he can to make this dude look amazing. And, like, Arn's doing the, like, you know, he's hitting the shoulder block and gets knocked off and doing the timeout stuff. And so, not necessarily, it's certainly not on par with any of the matches we just talked about, but to me, the rarity of it makes it interesting that he's
There's a
one of the
novelty
guys.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, if we're cutting off when Flair comes back, I'll save the rest of these for the next act.
Okay. So the demolition stuff we mentioned, there's a 6-man. Well, there's a lot of, in fact, it's not even worth doing individual matches. Dangerous Alliance multi-man tags. We'll be the 6-man on the Clash with Dustin, Ron Simmons, and I forget. And there's the famous one, Oracle, that you recently talked about. You and I discussed the famous Dangerous Alliance TV tag, right? There's the is that the 8-man? I forget now. I'm 8-man.
8-man, yeah. I mean, any Dangerous Alliance tag with Arn in it is exceptional. Yes. I mean, it's basically one of those deals where, I mean, it's, you know, being repetitive here. Any Arn Anderson match, WCW television in the early 90s is probably going to be at least fun in one way or another. Just tremendous in pretty much every way. I mean, any War Games match during that period. And of course, 94, which is not quite, you know, that's a part of our third act. But
yeah, that's a hoot.
I mean, you know, he's awesome.
Yes, indeed. I would also say that is, I think, as his peak, like Dangerous Alliance. That I think he's in the best shape.
That's where he.
Yeah. He's like a 10-year pro. You know, like, I think
fully rounded.
Around this point in the early 90s, I can't picture it. Did he take part in any of those like New Japan crossover shows? He did? Okay.
He and Zbyszko team on one of them, and him and Wyndham team up on the other. I can't remember. What the Zbyszko one is an insane watch because they wrestled to absolute silence while doing like the Larry and Arn shtick.
Dude, when you said Zbyszko, I was like, in Japan?
He also,
doing what?
Here's a quirky one for you, Alex. He and Steve Austin worked the G1 in '92 when it was this, you know, when the G1 was like single elimination tournament.
Yeah.
And famously, this is a great story that Steve Austin's told a lot. They drank a lot on the way over, flying over. It was Chono and Saito against Wyndham and Arn. There you go. I don't even remember that match being good, which makes it even funnier. It was that matchup. Arn and Austin got hammered on the way over because they thought they were going to land, have a day, and then wrestle. They landed and they drove them straight to the building to have their match.
Oh, that's awesome.
And the footage is out there, and like it actually got clipped up in like a favorable way not that long ago. But Austin and Arn, I think, have both said it's the worst wrestling match ever. In reality, it's just kind of like dull because the crowd's just watching two American guys do like a match. But yeah, there's a fun. But he did a couple of things there, yes. So that's an interesting deal for sure. Because I must say, stylistically, he was not a natural fit. The kind of American shtick and stooging things that he would use for crowd work don't work at all there.
Oh,
so he's just, you know.
Arn taking Koshinaka's ass offense. I can just see it now.
Yeah, I can't remember this. I just remember the crowd heat and like, you know the spot where you have the abdominal and you reach and the guy pulls the arm, the tag partner pulls your arm. Like they do that, and the Tokyo Dome is just dead silent while Larry's doing all of his like all of his shtick, and it's fucking fascinating, bro.
The Wrestling Summit. I think I told this on the Hennig one where Hennig takes a clothesline from who does he wrestle? It's Jumbo and Haku against Hennig and Rick Martel. He takes like a clothesline from Jumbo and he does his fucking Mr. Perfect backflip and the crowd goes, ugh. Like you can hear him just like Don't bring this shit over here.
It was such a huge difference back then, and it doesn't really exist now because there's such a everything's spread and blended. But
Homogenized.
it was a bit, yeah, exactly right. But not. I mean, even Flair had a lot of great matches in Japan, but some of Flair's stuff wouldn't work in Japan either. He was just so, he's Flair, right? So he would kind of overcome that. But some of the Flair All Japan stuff, I'm not a big fan of at all, and that's Flair. So you can imagine, otherwise. So let's kind of bridge the gap here. So Dangerous Alliance obviously comes to a halt. Paulie has a lot of heat. Bill Watts wants to move on. And Watts is ready to just move on entirely from any of the veterans. And Arn is in that camp. Famously, Havoc features that match with Havoc 92, that is, with him and Bobby Eaton and Michael Hayes. And there was that act of they're one half of three of the great units in, of the 80s. That's their gimmick.
There was Shane Douglas and young guys, right?
Yeah, Johnny Gunn, maybe Zenk. And Philly just says, fuck you, we refuse. And they cheer the old guys, and it rules. And of course, Arn is 33 years old, but that's even funnier. Arn has told the story before about wrestling PN News in Philly, and they hated PN News because, of course, it was a Philly crowd going to a WCW show. And Arn put him over, and apparently they were dead silent. And then as soon as PN News disappeared backstage, Arn stood up and said, and they gave him a standing ovation for putting over PN News, who they rejected. So yeah, he's kind of on the outs there, dude. It's interesting.
Sorry.
You're fine.
I was going to ask Oracle about, I just recently discovered that, do you remember in 99, 2000, the gimmick was Heyman would book Mabel and One Man Gang to come in and get squashed by Spike Dudley?
Yeah.
I just found out this week that one of those was PN News in the ECW arena. They brought him in. One of the accounts I follow, the nostalgia accounts posted, was holy shit. And he was doing his yo baby, yo, and that went over really well.
Yeah. I think that's on I think that clip's on the ECW set I had, or that my brother had and I watched several years back.
Was PN News a Bill Watts thing?
He can't have been, dude.
No, that was a Jim Herd thing, right?
Jim Herd. Yeah, that makes way more sense.
PN News started in 91, I think.
Yeah, you're probably right.
It was at the very end of Jim Herd.
Yeah.
And then bled into Kip Allen Fry, and I think Watts got rid of the PN News stuff, if I'm not mistaken.
That makes more sense. I always get that hot potato in early 90s WCW confused, because
so did they got confused too. Don't worry about it.
I think it's the Bash that year that PN News does the promo for. He's rapping, and that's supposed to get people to fucking buy the pay-per-view. So
let's get ready for this. Clash of the Champions 21. Eric Watts and Kensuke Sasaki defeated Arn Anderson and Bobby Eaton. Arn is embroiled in a feud with Bill Watts. There's one scene they do where he attacks him in the car park or something. I remember this vividly because the way they shoot it is Eric Watts is taking a photo with a fan, so that's their excuse for why someone's filming it. It's he met a fan. You may have seen that, Bob, on your Saturday Night Watch. I'm not sure.
But... Yeah, it's very early. Yeah, because they're outside and Arn just kind of goes after him, and
So Arn he doesn't wrestle for a bit there. And then he shows up in Smoky Mountain for 3 shots, 3 straight days, a loop. And the match there was the Rock and Roll Express and Arn Anderson versus the Heavenly Bodies, which was Eaton, Lane, and Pritchard.
If I'm not mistaken, in Smoky Mountain, they do an incredible reveal of Arn.
Yes, they do.
He's in a box or something, right? Or something weird like that.
And he gets some promo time, and the promos are all... I have not seen the matches. I don't have this footage
I've
matches.
seen the reveal of him showing up, but I didn't know that was the match. Holy shit.
Yeah. Because I actually don't know the details about it, but February 93 is when they try the working relationship before Watts gets canned, right? They do the thing with Cornette where they work Super Brawl. So maybe that was a holdover. I don't know. But it's a crazy match. We'll see the houses on these. And then he returns to WCW TV and floats around until it's time to do stuff with Ric Flair, basically. By the way, they drew 1,200 people in Knoxville for that, Oracle.
Dude, Smoky Mountain, you can find some matches in there that'll make your head spin. Undertaker, New Jack, that type of shit. So it's man, that doesn't surprise me. But yeah, I've seen the thing where they debut Arn, and of course the only footage of it that exists is 6th generation VHS dub that Cornette's Oh, I got it up at the house.
Mountain Wrestling, the best promotion ever. If there's one thing about that promotion, every damn promo is fucking awesome.
Yeah.
But
Except for Tim Horner. Except for
Bullet
Tim
Bob
Horner.
Armstrong was their top babyface, man. Come on.
Yeah,
He
the
packed him in,
WCW office. That's the WCW office at the time that was getting like actually outdrawn by that promotion. They should have been ashamed of themselves, dude. Like the talent they had, all-time great roster, and they were getting fucking outscored by Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Bullshit. So Arn gets back in the ball game, and Flair returns, of course, at Super Bowl '93. Correct, Oracle? Super Bowl '93 is when he returns.
Yes, Flair.
Yep.
Yeah, he's like doing like commentary and shows up and like.
There you go. So
if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Bobby was nodding there. I think because I know.
Yeah,
in fact,
nothing comes back.
So he obviously doesn't wrestle for a while, and instead we get those classic Flair for Gold were a real roller coaster.
Right? That was part of the deal. They were still
working contract. I believe so.
Yeah.
And like the story goes that because he was going to come back because Watts was there, and then Watts isn't there, and they give the book to Ole, and Ole allegedly said like, "What am I supposed to do if you just did a job on TV?" to Kurt Hennig, which is incredible. Giving the book to Ole at this point was like insane, right? Like what?
Like, the story of Ole was like fucking some like. I shouldn't use that word, but you know, dating,
a little bit aggressive, but yeah, there was some
dating. He was dating like a Turner corporate lady, right? Yeah,
which is even more like I don't know. So he floats around, and of course, then we build to the Horsemen who are going to get back together. And unless I'm mistaken, they basically just like say that Tully Blanchard's going to be there. He was not there. I believe the story goes that like Tully didn't agree on the money or something like that. So they had like advertised that the original Horsemen were back together, and instead it was on Ole, Rick, and Paul Roma who emerged.
Run in on this next match at the end is just every time it's funny.
You say this like it didn't give us all-time great fodder in the Four Horsemen documentary, and also Paul Roman shoot interviews.
I thought he was awesome in that.
He kind of cooked him in that, with being real.
Oh, dude. I wasn't kidding. Yeah, it's like Rick was jealous that he never had a body as good as mine.
Like I'm not like I do think Paul Roma, the Horseman thing was such a failure. I do think people do way too much about it. He was a talented guy, dude. He was gifted pro wrestler.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, I'm not as big a fan as I am of the Horseman guys, but in that he's so matter of fact that you can't help but kind of go, "Oh, maybe good for Paul Roma." I don't know. But either way, it goes without saying that was not a triumphant rendition of the Four Horsemen, and that would kind of become a theme, right? Kind of just starts and stops, and it never ever recaptured it in the aforementioned Horseman documentary. I'll go back to you, Alex. I apologize if I missed something. In the Horseman documentary, at one point, this turns into just Tully explaining over and over again that it always sucked when he wasn't in it, which is Beast. Alex, what was you going to say, mate?
Oh, I was more just kind of trying to think in my head of my Four Horsemen. I think I've said this before. Has always been
Sid one, right?
No, it's Rick, Arn, Pillman, and Benny. And obvious aside, that's a pretty fucking beast lineup. Not gonna lie,
it is. No, lineup wise, it's great. It's just Pillman's gone within 3 months. I don't know. Pillman's gone soon after that, right? With the Booker Man and all that business. Yeah, I don't know. It's a shame. There's a lot. I mean, even that lineup could have worked, dude. Even if Roman wasn't a natural Horseman, it's like it never came to be. It's a shame.
The coolest part about that Horseman run was when like they would do like the crowd shots of Pillman, and he would like have like the crazy like he would do like the four, and he would just be like looking like fucking.
That's what made it so cool. Like, and you know, we're obviously going to talk about Brian here in just a second, and both of our matches in the last act here, but like. That's what made it as a kid. I remember so awesome was like you had the old men there, Rick and Arn, that were trying to take this new kid under their wing. That you knew when it came down to it, they wouldn't be able to rein him in if he went off the deep end.
Which
like,
rules?
Yeah, that's like a really cool dynamic. And then
we get the great clip which Alex sent in our DMs earlier of the slap that Arn gives to Pillman, which is incredible.
Their dynamic is great, dude. Like Alex, you're on the money with that. Like that's not like you looking. That's actively the story they're telling, and it's awesome. Arn is so frustrated that he can't contain this dude who's so talented, but it's brilliant. Absolutely. So at the show where they reveal Roma is where Arn works Wyndham for the NWA belt, which isn't what you'd want it to be when I say that Wyndham and Arn wrestle for the NWA title at the Omni. But there's blood, and it's like 10 minutes, so watch that. That's fun.
What was the situation right now with the belts? I always get
this
confused
is when.
here.
So this match is like legit, like 2 or 3 months before, 4 months actually, before they're going to do the like international title thing. So it's like the secondary title, and then
this is also the last show where Barry Windham's awesome in the ring.
Yeah, which
he has a really great match with 2 Gold Scorpio on this show.
Yeah.
And basically right after this, like a month after this, Barry gets hurt, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like and
then he comes back and gets hurt again.
He's decent in 99
yeah.
He's decent as a tag worker in 99, but like I mean it's not Barry Windham at that point. But this is and the sad part is at the end of 92, I know we're jumping around here, but at the end of 92 into the middle of up through basically this show, Barry Windham is like he was becoming what everybody wanted him to become and what everybody sort of saw him as.
With the heel turn, yeah.
Like he was that 9-month run, he's literally incredible.
I think the Muta match is gets unnecessary hate. I think it's all
right. What pipe is that again?
Super Brawl, right? But when they say NWA title, is this the title that a year from now will end up with Shane Douglas throwing it on the ground?
Well, no.
Okay.
Well, I don't. This is because it's the big gold.
Right. Yeah.
It's the big gold. It's like a second. You know, Alex, it's like the Continental Crown in AEW. You know, it's like
sure.
That. I know you know all about that.
Is that Soraya's rules?
There you go. A few months after this, Flair would beat Wyndham, which pissed Wyndham off. And then when Rude won the NWA title was when they said enough. They drew the line at Rick Rude and they said, and that's when it became the international heavyweight title. But it isn't. I say all this to say it's not the top belt in the company. That's what matters, right?
Okay. So I had that terrible feud.
Oh, jeez. 10-minute match, undercard match. It's a good match. Go watch that. And then, of course, we're getting to where we're at here with the tag match, which the date on this was June 16th, right? Yep, June 16th, 93, Clash 23.
And Alex? If you'll indulge me, I looked up what the World Wrestling Federation was up to on this date. And they did a double header of house shows. June 16th, 1993, at the Civic Center in Canton, Ohio, they drew 1,600 people. This is a 1993 card if I've ever read one. Opening, Blake Beverly defeats Virgil. Kamala defeats Damian Demento. Razor Ramon defeats Tito Santana. The world title match halfway through the show, Yokozuna defeats Jim Duggan. Head Shrinkers defeat the Smoking Guns. Crush defeats Doink via disqualification. Matt Bourne wasn't just losing for no reason. And actually a pretty good match for 93. Lex Luger pins Bret Hart in the main event of that show.
Wow.
Then over in Rockford, Illinois, they don't have an attendance for this one. Owen Hart versus Terry Taylor. That was actually probably fucking beast, not going to lie.
Yeah.
Mr. Hughes defeats Bob Backlund. Sensational Sherry and Luna Vachon. Tatanka and Bam Bam Bigelow. Sean and Marty, singles match for the IC title. That was the touring one at the time. The Money Inc. defeated the Steiner brothers to win the tag titles because this was the famous house show match they wanted at that they played on TV. And then the main event was the Undertaker.
It's a Matt D.
Undertaker versus Giant Gonzalez main evented this. So what I'm trying to say is
the weekend before this would be Brett and King of the Ring, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. What I'm trying to say is I feel confident in saying, having not seen any of those matches, that what we're about to discuss was the best wrestling match a major promotion put on that day.
Fair. Very fair. It's 2 out of 3 falls. It's Arn Anderson, it's Ric Flair in his return match. It's the Hollywood Blondes. This one has a unique place in history because it's the match that would kill the Blondes, sadly, because it didn't do well in the ratings. And, of course, you couldn't blame Ric Flair. So they went. The Hollywood Blondes were no more. But I have to say that warts and all, this is a personal favorite of mine. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the way the Norfolk Scope looks. I don't know if it's Buffer. Yes,
Ric Flair is God to these people, man.
They go nuts for Flair, and his energy matches it. The only weird thing about this presentation, which is otherwise flawless until the finish, which is hilarious, is that they have Rick enter to Arn's music, which is like one of the weirdest things they ever did, which is saying something.
Yeah.
No clue on that. The buffer deal on this, though, I always post it, but him introducing Arn Anderson is like peak. I don't care that buffer fucked up everything. Him introducing Arn Anderson was worth it, dude. Incredible. Big fight feel, physicality, Jesse and Tony on the call. This has issues, this match. It isn't perfect by any means. There's just something about the feel of this that I just absolutely love it. Bobby, what did you make of the Clash main event here?
It rules. You know, what more can you want? You really laid it all out. Like, you look at the four guys in the ring, you look at the environment, you look at the commentators, just, it's incredible. And, you know, I've talked about the Hollywood Blondes quite a bit in the past year since I've kind of been going through watching. They were incredible. And this match just, it was a showcase for them. It's a showcase for Flair and Arn as well, obviously. And I know, you know, things went south after this for Hollywood Blondes like you're talking about, but just, you know, for the 30 minutes or whatever, 25 minutes ahead, it was just exceptional.
And there's some layers to it, right? Because Pillman, you know, kind of first have national prominence from his matches with Flair, and he's dynamic with Flair. And Austin has made no bones about Flair being like his wrestling hero, and the Stunning Steve character was him just trying to be Ric Flair. And you could see those fellas are desperate to have a great match.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It's been kind of debated whether they got there or not. I'm intrigued where you fall on this, Oracle, because this is like kind of divisive match. What do you think of it?
This is a good match. I love I mean, it's hard to beat WCW in terms of like their sort of sports style presentation and like everybody coming out in the Norfolk Sculpt. It's just fucking awesome, dude. Like that early 90s WCW fucking look, curtain, everything, just unmatched.
Can't beat it.
The thing that stood out to me most about this match is that Flair and Pillman beat the fuck out of each other.
Dude.
Yes, as always.
They were literally like hammering each other in the fucking head and like chopping the shit out of each other. It's awesome. The other thing that stands out is basically just the post-match, like, which I guess might be an indictment on the match. I think the match is pretty good. I don't think it's great.
Yeah.
But I love the atmosphere of the match. I love the crowd.
Right.
I love how fierce Flair and Pillman are, especially when they're going at it. This is more about ambiance, I think, than anything. This match, but it is a good match. The finish sucks. The post match is pretty famous though, with Barry Windham coming down and Paul Roma slides into the ring, jumps over the rail ever, and has the fucking nastiest looking mullet ever. Comes in and like, you know, tries to save Rick and Arn and shit. Like, but yeah, this is a what a fascinating period too, and Tony and Jesse might be my favorite short-lived like.
They're my favorite team.
Yeah.
Because
they were together for what, 15 months total, maybe.
Probably
They did worldwide in 92, right? They're on worldwide together because I think JR and Jesse did Saturday Night, right?
Yeah, and that obviously didn't quite work out. But yeah, it isn't a long run either way because Heenan's in.
I'm just talking like pay-per-view and Clash. Jesse and Tony did all in 93, right? Except for the first Clash where JR was on. But they did everything from.
I think they did all the Nasties Cactus tag matches too. They have some great calls in those.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Jesse's there until Heenan's there with them, and during those Cactus and
because they would do the thing where they'd call different matches sometimes. Like
that's right.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. That's true. Because then Jesse left like shortly after Hogan came in. Because I think he was there at Bash at the Beach '94.
He's there for a minute.
Funny how that worked out.
He allegedly gets fired for like falling asleep at a Disney taping, but we all know why he was fired.
Yeah,
brother.
Boom, boom. So anyway, pump myself. All right, so this professional wrestling match we're talking about here.
Oh, I do have to point out Jesse pointing out during the part where they get, I think Arn or Flair's or. Maybe Flair throws one of the blondes outside of the ring, and Jesse goes, "That's a disqualification."
I bought this on the Best of Clash DVD.
Hell
it's
yeah!
On that set, and I was watching this match, and I've seen this match so many times. And I was thinking, why is Jesse so quiet? And then it clicked for me why Jesse was quiet, is there was no Jesse.
Yeah.
But the way that they like navigate that is the mix is like fucked with, where they like turn the in-ring sound up. So when Flair is chopping these fellas, it sounds like guns going off. Like it's insane. It's awesome. But yeah, Shivani just took it to himself while Ric Flair kicks everyone's ass. So hell of a deal with this. You get the Austin deal where he does the Rick was on Fat Boy, which is beast.
He does that like paunch walk too. Yeah.
I just love it. I don't think it's like a perfect match at all. There's something to this, Alex. What did you make of it?
In addition to Steve doing the fat kind of paunch walk, you have Pillman go to mock Flair and he goes to strut and then he sells his back like he's old and his back's hurting him. I'm sure Ric Flair responded wonderfully to these two kids saying that he was old. Get the all-time WCW theme song of the Hollywood Blondes, which is up there with the Vader theme song and thankfully the one we're going to hear in the next match that we're covering.
Yes.
Michael Buffer declares that the Hollywood Blondes have had over 100 title defenses. So, there's no way to disprove that.
How base is that?
Kind of a somber thing here is when he introduces them, he says they are the tag team of the 90s. Yeah. And what a weird thing to think about of one's not going to see the end of the decade and the other one's going to become the biggest star in the history of the industry. It's pretty strange thing in that one moment. Oracle already called it out, but goddamn, Pillman caught a charter jet and flew over to the Budokan because he's just lighting these dudes up with these chops, man. He's like, I thought like he just was starting the match to like assert dominance, but like the whole time, and then when Flair gets in there with them, Flair's like, fuck this, dude, and just starts, returning fire. It's great. Flair is just, we've mentioned this when discussing Ric Flair. He's a very unfortunate human being and individual these days. But here, and in what we're about to discuss, this man, if there's ever someone who was born to be a professional wrestler, it was Ric Flair. When he gets in the ring, he just gets tagged in and walks into the ring, and people are standing, like just in anticipation of what he's going to do. I've seen some people say like Chris Jericho right now is like late stage Ric Flair in terms of damaging his legacy. And my immediate response would be like, just this match, you can watch this and realize Chris Jericho has never been like this over to any crowd he's ever wrestled in front of. In terms of like obviously Jericho's had good matches, he's done good shit, but like people have never thought of him as this like godlike figure like people have.
Yeah, Flair's, there's very few guys on Flair's level in that regard. Like these crowds saw him as God, as you said earlier.
Is it Austin that takes the DDT in this? Oh. And,
when he does the deal where he like slingshots, he like stops himself on the middle rope.
Yes.
And he turns into...
Oh, that's what happens. He goes for like the sit on the back and he hits it and he bounces himself up, which he did that. He brought that spot back during the Alliance when he was the bad guy. But he lands on his feet and then he turns to Rick and starts doing the Hollywood Blondes camera thing. Ha ha ha. And then he turns around and Arn DDTs him and the place goes fucking nuts. Hilariously, when we did our Terry Funk episode, we talked about the match at the Bash he had with Flair, and Flair does a flying forearm in that match, and we were talking about how I've never seen Ric Flair do a flying forearm. Well, he does one in this match too. It comes off the ropes and takes his head off. We do get Flair taking a suplex on the outside, so we get some prime. Oh God! Oh shit! Arn gets the hot tag in this. Steve takes a spine buster. As much as I'm trying to avoid talking about this, Jesse Ventura talks about the Cincinnati Bengals 2 times in this match. And fucking gets me very aggravated. These guys are sweating buckets. It looks like it's 150 degrees in that building, man, with those lights beaming down on them. And Joe, in case you were wondering if it's the summer of 1993, Tony Schiavone does talk about Jurassic Park.
There you go.
They're like the T-Rex in Jurassic Park. They smell the blood. And then we get this towards the end, this incredible moment of Jesse Ventura saying that Arn and Rick are stupid for making it a 2 out of 3 falls match, because if they hadn't, they would have won the titles already. And he says, like, I bet they regret that decision right now, Schiavone. And, Tony's trying to save face for him. He's like, well, I don't think so. And he goes, what do you mean? They'd be champions already. What are you, nuts?
That became an issue with Jesse in WCW where, like, his anti-babyface thing would go so far that he would actually make the babyfaces sound incredibly dumb. Like, he would go, and Shivani would be like, come on, man. Let me play defense here,
He would do that with Monsoon all the time, too, of like, well, when Hulk Hogan does it, it's okay. Would you stop? So that was really funny. The finish is kind of lame. I like the idea of heels losing a fall by disqualification, or even like the bad guys. Like, you could do this same formula to build towards like a money rematch where the bad guys get out of it by they still lose 2 falls in a row, but not actually like lose the titles or whatever. So the problem is, of course, here, Ric Flair made the brilliant decision to run Steve Austin out of the company after this. So never really got that.
Yeah, well, Dustin and Austin were kind of destined to be like the new generation of World Championship Wrestling, and that wasn't quite how things turned out, was it? So,
well, even Pillman too. I mean, Pillman at this point had been in WCW for 5 years or so.
Pillman, absolutely, yeah, you're right.
Very, very fun match. It's something I describe as good, not great, with some moments of like pure, like hell yeah, pro wrestling. Some fun stuff in this for sure.
For sure, it's kind of become a comfort match of mine. I think there's like probably too much on Facing Peril because that's not his game, to put it mildly. But again, yeah, it does have some issues. But Flair's energy, the atmosphere, the packaging, the presentation, all that comes with it makes for a memorable occasion. The Norfolk Scope, a hell of a time. All right, it's time to proceed to our final match of the evening. Before we do, though, we should probably, kind of bridge that gap, right? So, at the end of 1993, some things happened in the life of Arn Anderson and the gentleman who we covered recently on Grin Grappler, and we'll leave it at that. And he's away for a little bit for that reason. He returns in 1994 and eventually is part of the Stud Stable versus Dustin Rhodes and Friends feud, which produces that War Games match that Oracle and I love so much, where Terry Funk falls through the rings and is in rare form. And eventually kind of floats around, gets tangled back up with Flair in mid-95. And that brings us to here, because it is Full Brawl. It is September 17th, 95. It is Ric Flair versus Arn Anderson, the first time they had done this. They'd have a couple of rematches, but when people say Arn Anderson versus Ric Flair, this is the match they're talking about, right? Like the TV rematches are, And I want to shout out PWO Loss. Follow him on the Twitter gimmick. I quote tweeted his thread earlier because he's done extensive threads about this match. There's not a couple of them, but this is the one I remember. I quoted it earlier. Check out the Center Stage Chronicles too, which is a tremendous podcast about WCW. And he did an extensive thread about the lore behind this match. And if you watch the promos, it becomes quickly apparent that it is not actually like fan theory. It's just what Arn's saying, but it's lost on the announcers of the match because it's WCW. Arn Anderson is not bitter, nor is he jealous of Ric Flair's success. He's simply doing what he feels he has to do to rebuild the Four Horsemen, because the whole story of this match is that Ric Flair has been driven insane by Hulk Hogan. He has lost it. He's not the man he used to be. And the only way that Arn Anderson can fix that is to correct himself and go in there and beat up Ric Flair some until he gets it figured out. And I think that is tremendous, and it is entirely present in Arn's pre-match promo, which famously, Arn, after cutting that promo, turned the corner and threw up out of nerves. That's how fearful he was about having to wrestle this match. Such a big singles match on pay-per-view, 20-plus minutes worth. Flair has an insane pre-match promo also, which I'm sure we'll get back to. Yeah. But that's the story right in front of you. And the finish fools people because the Pillman thing then switches it and Flair's the babyface in the Nitro matches. Arn's the babyface in this match. And Asheville is the right spot for this one. 20-plus minutes, Tony Schiavone, even if he doesn't quite capture the story in the way that our friend Lost did, Schiavone is still fired up to call this, isn't he? You can tell it means a lot to him. He's talking about, these buildings and the way the Horsemen filled them in yesteryear. And here they go, Arn and Flair. Bobby, what did you think of it?
Yeah, I mean, even without like the emotional attachment that I imagine people had going into this, with the history of these two, like they really convey that. Commentary, like you said, doesn't really, but just the two of them are so good at it. And it takes a few minutes to really get going, but once it gets going, it's just so purposeful and just kind of everything matters, and really kind of a natural endpoint for us too to end with Flair, just because they're so tied together and will be forever. And yeah, I liked it quite a bit, and you could tell the crowd loved it. This is really what they wanted to see. They didn't want to see, Hogan do whatever, especially in 1995.
Yeah, it's very funny. That's what follows this, right? The infamous Hogan War Games with Dungeon of Doom. Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's interesting in that, like, it's a fitting place to him because of the Flair dynamic, but also because it's like, this is like a main event match for Arn. He has 20 plus minutes on pay-per-view with a top guy. Like, you didn't get a lot of these. Yeah, I think you see, and I love the match, but I do think you see elements of why this wasn't say he did a lot, because he is like just he's workmanlike, to use that phrase again, right? Like, he's very, but I've always liked this match, and I think that kind of story element in context gives it some serious power. Alex, what did you make of this? Is this the one, which was the match you'd seen before? Because I know this lineup was pretty much new to you, which was really cool. What was this one you'd seen? I forget.
Yeah, it was weird when we were putting it together. I was thinking, like, I guess all of my Arn match memories are kind of more obscure or more general, like war game style stuff. I had seen this before. I think, if I remember correctly, I watched this pay-per-view live as a wee one. All right, so got to start with the Flair promo. There's well, first we have to start by establishing also, in addition to the main event of the show being the Hogan and Friends War Games, this is the show that I can't remember if this was a Hogan directive, but someone in the company wanted to prove a point that the cruiserweights aren't good. And so the way they did that was giving Johnny B. Bad and Brian Pillman a 30-minute match to open the show that ended up, the crowd got really into it, and it's easily the best match Mark Marrow ever had. And they go nuts for him winning at the end, and Dave gave it 4 stars in The Observer.
Yeah.
And
I
so
think,
that's like a peak WCW story.
It is. I could be wrong on this, but I think it may have even been more pointed at Pillman. I think it was like specifically this put Brian Pillman in this spot. And
really? Okay.
I could be wrong on that. I could be entirely wrong. Chat, if you know anything, help us out. But the
I remember
story
the idea was, let's give them 30 minutes on pay-per-view to make them tank.
Yeah.
Like, that was like,
watch them die out there. Yeah,
ridiculous.
Brilliant. Great way of approaching your pay-per-view, isn't it?
Yeah. That's a great use of money. Anyway, after this is when we get our first discussion with Tony and Bobby about the match. And as Shivani's throwing it to the back for Flair, Heenan looks like off in the distance, and he goes, "Yeah, same to you, kid." And Shivani, like, it clearly catches him off guard. Flair cuts one of the, and this is saying something, one of the great Ric Flair promos. And the big poignant line is when Gene asks him, "Do you hate Arn Anderson?" And he says, "The problem is I love him. He's a brother to me." And he talks about the importance of their friendship and how it's going to pain him to do what he does tonight. Then we cut to, an hour and a half later in the pay-per-view. And I don't know what the miscommunication was, but they cut to Mean Gene, and he's blown up. And he's like, I didn't realize I was going to have to run a half mile to get back up here so quick. I felt like Roger Bannister. And I was like, who the fuck is Roger Bannister? I looked that up, and Roger Bannister was the first human in history to run a sub 4-minute mile on May 6th of 1954. So, don't let anyone ever tell you that pro wrestling didn't teach you anything. So Arn has this promo here, which is incredible. And when you watch it, knowing how the match plays out, the closing line is so fucking awesome, where he says, "I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I'm going to respect myself, and you're going to respect me too." Like, that's tremendous shit.
Mm-hmm.
Arn comes out to the Four Horsemen theme, which for any promotion is one of the all-time great entrance themes in pro wrestling.
Yeah.
That just howling guitar. He's very determined. A touch here that I honestly can't think of another example of where they have the wrestlers come out to watch the match, like, because they're so invested in what's going to happen. And it's great in the end too, because like the heels applaud the finish, and the baby faces are just like disgusted with what happened.
What was the indie match where they did that? Was it? Oh fuck! It might have been Quackenbush and King, dude. Shikara. Remember the title match Quackenbush and Eddie had when it was the first Shikara title match, and they had the boys like filter out during the match. I swear, Chad,
Yeah.
you know this. I think that's what happened. But
That sounds
to your
right.
point, this is very different to that.
I in a shoot capacity, I think that's the story with Joe and Necro also, is all the wrestlers were like, oh shit, what's gonna happen?
Yes,
So they were all watching it. As I mentioned, we got Randy Anderson opening and closing. I mean, this match is a fantastic exhibition of what makes pro wrestling great, even down to the point where Ric Flair powders and there's a woman standing up literally doing the chicken motion with her arms at Ric Flair, saying that he's too chicken to get back in the ring with Arn Anderson. We show Pillman at ringside. He didn't have the mullet anymore. He just kind of had his hair slicked back. And I would venture to guess my boy Brian was putting up Jordan numbers on the road at that point in time, man. He was a good-looking man. Working punches on both sides, just absolutely flawless, gorgeous. Flair does a double axe handle off the top rope to the floor, which is pretty funny, the novelty of it. I really like he doesn't quite low blow Arn, but he hits him low enough that it's like questionable what he did. Arn's kind of wearing him out on the outside. He's, chopping them, and they're kind of, snugging up on each other. And Heenan goes, he'll knock the pennies out of your loafers. By the way, why are you wearing penny loafers with a tux? He says that to Shivani. It's pretty funny here, again, considering what's to come in the main event of this show. And, it's 1995, so the hottest wrestler that everyone's talking about is Sabu. And we get our ECW spots in where Flair takes a backdrop on the floor, and then he gives Arn a suplex on the floor. I was chanting ECW at my TV watching it. Great. The reaction from the crowd when he actually gets the figure four locked in is awesome, because they're like, oh, this is it. He can't get out of it. And then when he tries to go for it again and Arn gets him in a small package, the crowd bites on it. They think that's the finish. Like, it's a really good sequence. So close comes. Pillman gets up on the apron and starts. He doesn't even distract him. Flair turns to him and he literally goes, fuck off. And then he turns back around to what he's doing. And then, Pillman punches him. Flair gets back up and punches Pillman. And he thinks it's done. And then Pillman throws, he kind of lunges himself over the ropes to boot Flair in the back of the head. And it looks really sloppy. But honestly, if you were trying to sucker punch someone or kick someone in that scenario when you didn't think they were paying attention, it would probably look something similar to that. So I enjoy it. Falls him right into a DDT. Emotions rampant throughout the audience. It stays on the hard camera shot for the 3 count. There's this one guy jumping up and down, his college team against all odds just won the national championship. And then there's this, I don't know if they're a married couple or they're brother and sister, but there's these 2 people dead center opposite hard cam, just literally just shaking their heads in disgust, not reacting to anything. They're just like, how could we do that? How could this happen? Just reprehensible. And we're off to the races. This is a fantastic example of, even with the lore you said being ignored, and the announcers and the company kind of doing their own thing, because the focus is still fucking Hogan, for crying out loud. But you would think this was treated as a much bigger deal than it was, and it still to a certain extent was treated as a big deal on TV. But this is an example of how to get the most out of what you're given. And this is given, less time on pay-per-view than the match that they were trying to intentionally tank. So the idea of how much they were able to get out of this is, if you've never seen this match, it's something to definitely check out. And Arn is unbelievable in it. And like I said, the promo and his motivations going into it, when you know that in the back of his head he knows he's going to cheat to win this match, is just chef's kiss. Fantastic pro wrestling.
Yeah, I think this is a great, I think it's a very, very good match, and it's one that I personally loved for obvious reasons, but I think it's a great Arn Anderson performance in particular. The way he conveys the emotion and how much it means to him in classic Arn fashion, because Flair's obviously, Flair's many things, but at this point, subtle is not one of them. He's like a caricature, which is kind of part of the story they tell. But Oracle, what did you make of this one, rewatching it, mate?
Oh, just I mean, the build of this match is incredible. The pre-match promos are amazing. I really love how, as our friend Lost points out in his thread, how they really make those promos in the build meaningful within the actual match,
For sure.
and really add the context in. Like Arn, like Rick's bullshit not working on Arn is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And Rick's like facial expressions and reactions to it are amazing because he's so mad that his bullshit isn't working on Arn. And then he's able to mid-match change his game plan in order to, react to Arn being able to counter his stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And Rick's able to change his, game plan mid-match, work the leg, hit it in the figure four. The drama in the figure four is awesome. Arn turns it. This whole match is just so awesome because it's the whole like two brothers, best friends fighting vibe, but at the same time it gets Arn over and like really
Mm-hmm.
shows how Arn it works for both guys because the whole thing is like Flair's there to show there's a reason Arn's the enforcer and the second guy in command and Arn wants to prove that he can hang and he's he's where he is for a reason, and Flair couldn't get as far as he did without him and all that stuff, and it's very nuanced in that way, and they do a really terrific job of sort of laying that out. I really liked, at least in his PWO write up of it many years ago. Now I didn't read the whole thread you posted, Joe. I think I read it at the time back in late 2020. Because his PWO post is like 12 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
He pointed out an interesting thing where he kind of wishes that Loss, I'm talking of talking about PWO, mentions that he kind of wished that they had Arn and Sting team up.
Yeah, it was
against Flair
switched. Yeah.
and switched it. Even though I know like the whole thing where like Pillman kicks Flair or whatever, but like he wished they had switched it up and then had Arn turn on Sting.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of would have been a little bit cooler. Of course, we wouldn't get the great moment with Flair strutting in the ring and then
Right, but it would have actually,
yeah,
it would have kind of fit the story in some ways of like
right.
Arn
But yeah,
almost approaching it.
perfect. I don't love the finish, to be honest. I love that Arn won the match. But it was kind of hard to, they kind of had to have an out in this match, and
for sure.
But yeah,
It just isn't satisfying, I guess. After
correct.
Yeah, to that pitch, I think that could have been cool because if Arn had turned on Sting, it could have been framed as like he realized that Rick had fixed himself and was ready to be the Horseman leader again. Like that's pretty sweet. You mentioned the early stuff of Rick's tricks and him being a step ahead of them and not biting. And there's that great one where he slaps Rick and Rick has the wide eyes, like I'm in trouble here, dude. This is... And then, as you mentioned, Flair like. Arn does what he wants to do. Flair has to get down to business, and he has that great moment where Arn's out wrestling on the mat, and Flair times him with that chop, and Arn bumps. Oh my god, I always loved that, and the way Johnny calls it. Great stuff. It's a little bit loose at times in terms of like where they're going with the match. I think like Arn does a lot of stuff on the arm, and 95 Ric Flair and things of that nature. There's some great brawling. There's that shot in the corner. WCW would always get them hard, like them close-ups in the corner when guys are throwing strikes, and Flair's throwing punches when Arn's got one leg. Oh my god, that's beautiful. Arn's like out on his feet cell is fucking awesome in this deal. Flair hooks the top rope on Arn's DDT. All of these things, wonderful. Arn's facial expression that he's selling. Incredibly strong Arn Anderson performance. And Flair's really good in the match, but Flair in 95 is...
I just thought of the part early in the match where like you get it from Arn's point of view from behind Flair over Flair's shoulder. from like the turnbuckle where like
Yep.
early on when Flair gets it on his face and Arn gives like, oh, you really? You know,
Yeah.
Arn gives him like this
You
stare
do this to
down, like,
me?
okay.
Yeah.
You know, like, all right, you know, you want to get in my face and do your shit? Let's go. Like,
Yeah.
it's so fucking awesome. You know what I'm talking about? That one
I know exactly
camera
what you're
that
talking about. Yeah. And
So
on
amazing.
like because on so like again that the facials are so kind of human, it's a great contrast with Flair, who's like a cartoon character. And that even works in the story's favor because it's like he wants Flair to get down to business, right, and be serious. And Flair's become this like insane man who's been drove crazy by Hulk Hogan. It's fucking awesome. I love the match. I don't think it's like perfect in a lot of ways because like Flair in '95. I love this version of Flair as a character, and he's the engine on Nitro in a lot of ways, but his matches are kind of circular, right? Like he has his handful of things he does, and I think that's one of the issues it has. But I mean, it's great, dude. Arn Anderson's amazing in it, especially. And that is the end of our match lineup. Of course, after this, the Horsemen, the one that Alex mentioned, you know, forms on the back of this, and that leads eventually. Pillman's gone by that point, but it leads to the NWO stuff, which we talked about. And I think, Alex, you nailed it earlier. Arn doesn't get enough credit for his part in establishing what a threat the NWO were with his promos. The way that you would talk about WCW's our world and we have to fight to protect it. I mean, some of his best promo work, one at Disney is a classic. And with that in mind, let's call out some other matches. The NWO War Games would certainly be one of them. There's the Vader Sting Flair Arn tag, Alex, that we always pop about because Vader loved it and it's just like his favorite match ever. He talks about it over and over again.
Yeah.
Sorry, Vader and Austin, I should say. My apologies.
Yeah.
Vader and Austin tag.
Oh yeah.
Arn and Regal, we've discussed. They have a few matches, to be fair, but the pay-per-view match is the infamous Dave Gate.
Yeah. And also the live audience has no idea how to respond to it.
Yes. And the
Arn
Alex Wright
with
match.
the Stars and Stripes, which I think we.
There you go.
Yeah, I've talked about it here on before. That actually occurs in spring of '95, but that's a.
There you go.
That's a really good match.
Any others from this last leg of Arn Anderson's career?
The brawl he and Kevin Sullivan have on a Nitro, leading up to Starrcade '96 is fucking awesome.
Yes, it is. Good call. I think any other Nitros.
It's kind of peaks and valleys, but the parts of the match that are good are fucking great, and that's Arn and Paul Roma against the Nasty Boys at Fall Brawl '93.
Right.
It's probably 5 to 7 minutes too long, but the parts of it that work are really good. You get Paul Roma's diving elbow, which was a thing of beauty, and you get Nasty Boys era Missy Hyatt, which, as we all know, was the greatest era of Missy Hyatt. It's fine as a match, but as the like, what the fuck, it's even better. Arn Anderson and Terry Funk against Bobby Eaton and Sabu at the ECW Arena at ECW Worlds Collide 1994, which the story, I believe, was that, which I don't know why more people don't do this, Heyman was just like trademarking shit, like names and stuff, so that like if it came up, I own it. And he owned the name Worlds Collide for the purposes of a wrestling show, and that's what WCW did that show with AAA. Is that what they called it? Yeah. And so in order for him to let them use it or give him the trademark or whatever for it, he was like, okay, well, like, give me Arn Anderson and Bobby Eaton for a match at the show. And so the match is like fine. It's nothing blow away, but Arn gives Sabu the spine buster in the ECW arena with like hat guy and sign guy in the background. Like it's the full 94, 95 ECW aesthetic, and it just looks insane. So that's something to check out as well.
For sure, I really like him and Flair have a tag on Nitro with the Rock and Roll Express, which is quirky. It's not like, I mean, of course, it's not great, but like it's fun and they have time too. It's a weird thing to watch, so watch that. It's fun. I'm trying to think of a Nitro
2-hour ones, right?
What are the what? Sorry,
it's one of the first 2-hour ones.
Yeah, I think so.
Only before the Disney tapings. It's in the build to the
Yes.
It's in the build of the Kevin Green, Steve Mongo tag, right?
When Heenan's another one that's fun is he had like Savage's first, like, it was his first TV match in real time, but it aired after the Clash. But him and Savage have a TV title match in early '95 that goes. Yeah. They do that weird thing they would do where it's a time limit draw, but then they carry on the match so Savage can win, but not for the belt, of course. That's fun. There's a handful. Any others come to mind, fellas, for the rest of Arn's career?
one of his last matches is just I can't remember if the match is good or bad. It's Arn, so he's good in it. But one of his very last matches airs in like January or because his last official time as a worker, I think he wrestled through January '97. But he has a match with Chavo Jr. on like Saturday night. That's like might be his last match of like his actual like.
Locking in on this one. Good call, Oracle. I like it. We should also. I like the Havoc match with Dustin too from '94. I like that match too.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Oh, I see it. Birmingham, Alabama, December '96. Aired on January 4th, Tokyo Dome.
Okay, yeah. So he's good. So I think he's got a couple of tags after that. I just remember the Chavo match being like towards the very end of his.
This might not exist on the internet. Bob, fill dead air while I study Chavo Guerrero.
Okay. Yeah, Alex, you talk about that ECW Worlds Collide thing. I'm actually coming up on that in my rewatch. I didn't even know about any of that until he showed up, in the ECW arena and Joey Styles loses his mind and shit ruled, man.
Yeah, that's there's that and like the Summer Sizzler '93 or whatever they did where Stan Hansen wrestled in the ECW arena. Yeah, that shit's always crazy.
That ruled too.
Okay, here we go. Yeah. So,
it's on YouTube.
His last match that was televised on that run, at least live, was a Nitro tag with Mongo versus the Amazing French Canadians. That's awesome.
Oh,
I don't think Arn worked very much in that match.
No, he's basically, my understanding is the Luger pay-per-view match is like, after that, he's just hanging on. He shouldn't be wrestling, I don't think. So he retires.
He worked that crazy brawl with Sullivan where they were like doing crazy shit to each other in December of '96.
He officially retires in August '97, which is one of the most iconic Nitro segments. Of course, it would fuel a parody segment that is equally memorable.
It's funny.
Better or worse. People remember it, right? Like, it is what it is. And it is funny. It's just, we'll never know. And I don't trust any of the people involved because they're wrestlers, but we'll never know what was the groundwork in terms of making sure everyone was okay with it, right? Like, Nash claims that it was like all fine until
they liked it until they called their wives.
Yeah,
they made you look like drunk boobs.
There you go,
dude. Okay,
of course, yes.
Okay, so here's the thing: the funniest part about that segment is not Nash's impression of Arn, and it's not Pac doing like the crying. The funniest thing about that segment is that Conan is Mongo, and he can't hold on to a football. There's parts where like they try to throw him the football and he just drops it, and he tries to pick it up and he drops it. And that's obviously Mongo wasn't like a fucking running back or anything, but still the idea that he's the football player and he can't hold on to the ball is very funny. That and the really bad braided blonde ponytail that Buff Bagwell wears during that segment. Those are the little touches that are funny.
The issue, of course, is not the segment. It's the follow-up, right? It's the fact that they actually get a one-up on the Horsemen and just beat the shit out of them in War Games and heading to, like, that's the actual issue. And that's why people remember it the way they do. Of course, famously, as a, retired wrestler, Arn is a huge part of the Flair segment in September '98 where he comes back. And
my God, I almost forgot the Four Horsemen.
Of course. And at this point, even before he retired, he was doing like agenting for WCW. And of course, that would be his thing. He would appear on WWE TV, Mania 18. It feels like this is a good time to talk about that. Any more than we already have. Anyone wants to add anything regarding WrestleMania 18 and the famed Arn Anderson Spinebuster? Now's the time. I know we've kind of talked about it, but
yeah, that match is way better than it has any right to be, just in general. But yeah, that moment puts it over the top.
And then there's the Flair Austin feud where Austin pees on Arn, which is just
what?
I don't remember that. Oh,
yes, that's a real thing.
Oh yeah,
because Arn is like, when they do the draft, Arn's like Rick's assistant, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's got the clipboard. Yeah, that's right.
Imagine building a big ball with Arn Anderson. It sounds so beast. Glasses at the end of his nose, He became like one of the premier agents in the World Wrestling Federation. Of course, he was John Cena's lead agent. He once claimed after Deuce failed to catch The Undertaker that they almost had a death there that night, which is very funny. And he would ultimately leave in a very unfortunate circumstance. Alex, what was you going to say, mate?
Oh, just having been in the building, I think more than one person thought The Undertaker might have died. So,
yeah. Yeah, the story was the big LG Doc Gallows of NXT fame told the story, as did Kurt Hawkins of Brian Myers fame. He said that Dean Malenko had all of his matches had finished, the ones that he agented, so he was like chilling with his wife watching the show. And then he saw that dive and he said, I'll be back in a second. And he sprinted to Gorilla in fear. And the story I'm not going to do an Arn impression, but Arn allegedly sat everyone, all the underneath guys, and said, we almost had a death here tonight. Pointed at Deuce and said, and it was your fault. Which then led to, apologies to Deuce who's watching, but there was a lumberjack match the next night, and the names were already up on the board, and they just literally put an X through Deuce. They just scrubbed him out as a lumberjack. He couldn't even be trusted to be a lumberjack, and that was the end of that. His WWE run obviously ended in very unfortunate terms with the Alicia Fox story, which I don't know a lot about, and also is not really about him so much, so it feels like something not worth dwelling on.
Was there ever footage of that house show he ran in and gave Ziggler a spine buster?
Yes. Yeah, that's
awesome.
I think they've even uploaded it because that was when Starrcade was like saying they would talk about but not actually show before they did as a network special.
Okay.
Right? Or 16,
It was 15? It was Bobby Roode and Dolph was the match, and Arn does a spine buster. And Arn recently did like a podcast with Dolph, and it was actually fucking awesome. It was great. There's like a lot of respect there, so that was cool. And they talk about that moment, which is fun too. Then of course he would reemerge as a TV character. AEW, Cody Rhodes coach. Some very up and down run, as you know, he sometimes, bless him, would, you know, there was some sad moments, like he fell down a couple of times, and admittedly it was very funny, but he seems to be in a lot of pain. So I tried to, the one where he fell like within the ramp was unlike anything I've ever seen in my life. I still can't believe that happened. And like Jose, the assistant, had to like pull him out of the, and like his promos were very up and down, but he had the promo with the Glock and all that came with it, and that became like a meme and gave him like new life as a wrestling celebrity.
And then he showed up in the World Wrestling Federation.
And then when Cody left,
SummerSlam,
backstage, and when Cody left, they tried like a couple of things. He did the Wardlow thing. Remember that?
Oh yeah,
managed Wardlow, bro. I don't know why, he just did for a while. They did a spot where he like, what was that thing he did with Luchasaurus where he had like shit coming out of his mouth? Do you remember this? What was that thing he did on AEW chat? He did like a Lexi. There was all like shit coming out of his mouth. I can't remember what it was. He did
so
this.
So is Arn in the Fed now again?
He's not. No, unfortunately. We haven't got the Legends deal yet, which is all I want because I want him to just get the figures in the game. Arn like told Cody he quit, and then the next week he was like in Cody's backyard burning his clothes and being like, come on, let's go train. I swear something happened to him where he got like blood in his mouth or something. I don't know. Maybe it's the Wardlow Christian Cage match. I don't know. That was a bad show. I forget these things. Either way, it ended, and he's now a podcaster that did his thing with the SummerSlam. So that's the Arn Anderson story. Let's take her home here. Any closing thoughts on the legacy of Arn Anderson? It's very difficult to add really at this point because we've talked, 2 hours and 50 minutes about Arn. But if there is anything to add, now's the time. Bobby, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, he rules. That's the conclusion we always come to at the end of these. But like, I think you really said it best. Like, he's best watched in the context of watching, a full show where there's a bunch of bad stuff on it, and he's just a breath of fresh air for however long he's in the ring. And, we kind of saw that in all of these matches too. Like, none of them were bad. I mean, they weren't all for me, but like none of them were bad. They're all very well done. And I think, honestly, the Spinebuster alone, just the way that he does that move and the way it looks is just, so tremendous and, going to be just a huge part of his legacy.
Right. We had to note this. He blocked Malachi's kick 2 weeks into his run. All-time great thing that happened. Yeah. What I was thinking of was he bit Luchasaurus like thumb or something. And like all like the shit that was on Luchasaurus' hand or whatever was in his mouth. It was very strange. Very, very funny deal. That's what I was talking about. Of course, the Luchasaurus Arn Anderson interaction. Oracle. Anything to add on the legacy of Arn Anderson before we add him to the Grappler archives?
No, the best thing I can say is he's one of those wrestlers, and there's probably this is not very many, but he's one of about a dozen, maybe, anywhere between a dozen and 2 dozen wrestlers that if I see a match of theirs, I'll just turn on and watch it.
Yeah.
He's
which is a great compliment.
Yeah,
compliment.
I will watch anything from Arn Anderson. It's an immediate, press play for me.
Yeah, I love it. Tremendous. Alex, any closing thoughts, mate?
I was trying to remember he nor Rick are in Revenge, which is insane.
Wow. Why, I wonder? Was Rick in his conflict with them at that point?
Probably. But like that's all that's missing, because that game has like fucking everybody. Shit. Where was I? And who's to say? Arn Anderson is a perfect wrestler. Arn Anderson, a gigantic problem right now with wrestling. And our boys, the FTR, this was kind of one of the things with them that I was able to draw like the line to of. They were so awesome when they were the mechanics, and then even like all the runs through NXT and everything. I don't like this idea now of wrestlers that act being that they have good matches. Like I don't like that being part of like characters is that we have good matches. Arn is a great example of what the 6 matches we just watched are indicative of what he was capable of, and they're all very good. But at no point is any of the story of the match how good the match is. At no point is like the match meant to like sizzle, or there's no point in any of the shit that he does that like is supposed to be downtime so the crowd can chant "This is awesome." Obviously, that didn't exist at the time, but you know what? You kind of know what I mean here. The way they structured his matches and whatnot, and not to throw FTR under the bus because they're probably the best.
I get what you mean, though, yeah.
But like Arn, be it a good guy or a bad guy, the things he did in the match never took away from what the story of the match was trying to convey and made you go, oh, look what Arn Anderson's doing. He was just so flawless at what he did. That's why, like, thankless is the wrong word to use, but like
certainly selfless. Certainly selfless.
Yes. Yeah. You know, you look at like Shawn Michaels is a great example of like, yeah, Shawn had great matches and did great work, but everything he did was meant with the purpose of like, look what Shawn Michaels did. Whereas Arn, like, that's what I mean of just like, it's not that he like these guys don't get it, because they do. It's just the way they execute it. And like Arn got that if I do this, it's going to make this look better, and then eventually I can make more money, or I'll get an opportunity to do this here. It was just a completely different approach to wrestling that very few guys have had, and have succeeded at the level that he did. I would legitimately consider him like one of, when I say underrated, I mean in what I'm talking about right now, not in terms of like match quality. I think a lot of people don't understand why he was so good. Fans, that is, like, because now, you know, the Undertaker, you know, now that he's like a legitimate personality, he always talks about, oh, Arn Anderson's the best wrestler ever and shit like that. So I think people understand that they're supposed to think he's good, but I'm not sure that it's ever really like explained why he was great.
Yeah. And so like, you'll look at the tape and not get it, maybe. Yeah. I get it.
So Arn Anderson, it's hard to say he's under-celebrated because that's certainly not the case. But my God, just he got it. That's, you know, I know that sounds like so pretentious and such like a film critic thing to say, but he just got it. But he really did. And, you know, when you want to put on top of it, he wrestled on a Starrcade and a WrestleMania. Like, that's, again, there's only like X amount of people who have done that shit. And he wrestled in the ECW arena against Sabu. There's only X amount of people who have done that shit. So Arn Anderson is someone who is studied. He should be studied for generations to come, both behind the microphone and in the ring. And what Oracle said too, I think your batting average will be pretty high of picking any Arn Anderson match and its quality being, you know, at least watchable.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. And, you know, to reiterate, I think the legacy there, you know, as we said earlier, the ultimate War Games guy, right? The greatest War Games wrestler, the MVP of that match type. One of the all-time great tag team wrestlers, no doubt. That was why I wanted to feature, you know, at least 3 tag matches. I think it's such a big part of his story. one of the great promo guys. And I think when you put all that together, I think you have, and I don't know what this list looks like, but I'm going to just say, I don't think you guys will disagree. He's probably the greatest like wrestling role player ever, right? It's like if you were to use that term, like completely understood what he needed to do to make the show better, and was just like as you said it, Alex. There's very few guys that even fit that description, really. Many wrestling role players are kind of reluctantly because they want to be the guy, and on by all accounts he was a role player and he was the greatest of that, I think. So there is Arn Anderson in the books. We have a super chat, which we greatly appreciate, especially this late hour. Generic says, not sure if I'm regretting signing up for LNG Gold or regretting not signing up for a higher tier. Probably the first one, but we appreciate the thought of the second one. Speaking of LNG Gold, do a quick plug here. We'll do some full plugs in a minute. But tomorrow night, the lads are going to do a Dynamite Grin along. Novi, Caden, and Brainbuster. I will not be there because I have some business to handle. I'll be at the show working Gorilla, but I'm not. That's a joke. But they're going to do a Grin along tomorrow on LNG Gold for all members. So check that out regardless of what tier you're on. Thank you for the super chat. We hope you've enjoyed the show. All right, fellas. I think it's time to look ahead to October's Grappler, don't you?
Uh-oh.
A unique selection of professional wrestlers awaits us. And I mean, after this recent run, I think all of these are kind of, it feels like every show is kind of a wild swing now. We've opened up the doors to such a wild degree. But here we go.
The Forbidden Door?
Well, we have a couple big guys. One of them, a Bob O'Neill favorite, and an interesting professional wrestling story. We have Abyss as one of our candidates. The other is someone who, while he is built very differently to Alexa Bliss, had a similar run of being on top for a year or so and then doing tag stuff while sort of fading away, which is Yokozuna. This came to my mind because I was talking to my brother about what a Yoko match line would be, and I was like, it'd probably be similar to the Alexa one. And I was like, yeah, that works. Because he's not a long career, sadly, right? You got some stuff pre-WWF, though, so that would help. Yeah. If it was just WWF, it would be difficult, I think. And I love Yoko, but,
Wild card match from Survivor Series 95.
There you go. That's a hell of a match. We have someone who's not a big man, Taz.
Ooh.
We have someone who came up earlier on a different show on a different platform. My bad. It was Scott Hall. We got sent a super chat. It was like 8 questions about Razor Ramon. Very, very confusing.
Oh, some fucking sweet ass matches from Razor Ramon.
Yeah.
Yep. Scott Hall we have. And then we have two guys who are currently operating as, they actually kind of had a trade recently between promotions as sort of like the legends of their rosters. We have Adam Copeland Edge.
Nope.
And we have the King of Pepsi, CM Punk, to round out our list. So we have Abyss, we have Yoko, we have Taz, Scott Hall, Edge, and CM Punk. That's our options here for October. Bobby, you always go first on this, so go for it.
All right. I don't know that there'd be quite enough for Abyss. I know he's got a lot of, good stuff, but like the eras would be, you'd have the Jurassic Park stuff, I guess, too.
The Ring of Honor stuff is sick, dude. If we could find it, Honor Club apparently exists.
With the embassy.
Yeah.
Yoko rules. I would not have any problem with that. I guess the only thing with Punk is that, it's one of those things where the story's still kind of going.
It's that, and it's also like, do we want to open up to the CM Punk conversation at this point in our lives?
Taz would be cool, but he'll probably watch it, so
he fucking hates me.
Be careful about that.
He hates me too, so yeah, that's a bad idea.
Edge, So
we're down to, so who are we down to then, Paul? At that point, we're at the Scott and Yoko.
Yeah, which honestly, either one.
Problem with Yoko, and I love Yoko, but I was only half kidding with that comfort. Like, there's not. Like, you can do the pre-WWF stuff. What would be the WWF stuff? Like, main event WWF. Because, again, the best stuff is house show stuff. The cage match with Brett at the Garden, it's great. But are we really going to do a fan cam? It feels like...
That's true.
I feel like Bob would punch us in the face if we asked him.
No, I think Scott Hall, though, that's intriguing, and you kind of have 3 clear acts.
What would be your acts, like, pre-WWF Razor and then in post-WWF?
Yeah.
I wonder...
You could
do Big Scott Hall.
Scott Hall, he has some good tags in AWA with Hennig. So
that's what I was thinking.
You can work some things out there in the pre-fed. The Razor stuff is fucking awesome. I think he's like Razor Ramon is awesome.
Yeah, he is.
I agree.
And then there's just enough good stuff after that. I think when he's sober,
Yeah.
he's quite good. In the NWO, I think he's the most consistent guy in the ring.
He has some good performances. Yeah.
So honestly, I actually, now that I'm talking myself into it, because even though we could do it for these other guys, wait a minute, we didn't do that for the Piper one, did we? Did we do the Slamboree 97 match for Piper?
No. I don't think so. I've seen it, but no, I don't.
No, me and Joe drew a hard line on no WCW.
Right, I'm going to see if we did it though, because it feels like saying. I think Oracle Live just talked about it so much. I'm going to check. I'm going to check the spreadsheet.
If we do Hall, now I really want to do Hall because we got to do that match. That's one of my favorite matches ever.
Yep, we haven't done it yet.
That match is incredible.
You know what else is good, dude?
In the history of wrestling.
Great Scott Hall performance is him and Kev versus Harlem Heat. He's great in that match. Havoc.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
he's great in that, and he's great in. He and Waltman both are incredible in that Slamboree 97 tag.
So it feels like we're leaning Scott Hall. Alex, do you have any pushback on this?
I was going to say Taz, but all right.
Taz, I could do Taz, but I'm convinced. I've convinced myself to do Hall now.
Oracle's all in. When Oracle's all in, I think you got to roll with it. Right?
Hashtag all in. Yeah. My main thing was going to be dying on the hill of doing Taz and Spike against the Dudleys from the 2002 Royal Rumble, because that match is amazing.
That match
yeah, I mean, Scott Hall, there's plenty we could do with that.
For sure. All right, there it is. Grin Grappler, Scott Hall. That'll be up next for us, folks, on the October Grin Grappler. My God, look at this. Scott Hall and Taker. This is Masasaito and Hashimoto in New Japan.
As you do.
God, I love wrestling history. All right, that's what's coming up. This has been a wonderful time. We're going to do some plugs when we get out of here because it's very late. Very, very late. Bobby, what would you like to promote?
Shit, I might not be back here till next Friday to preview Bad Blood at this point.
Shit.
I've been coming on vacation, but I ended up having another thing to do, and I don't think I'll be here till next Friday for Bad Blood. I mean, so watch that. Also watch a Grin this week. Watch whatever everyone else plugs.
Thanks, mate. I kind of think that's implied, but I like the idea that there's someone out there that's a big Bob fan that's like, Bob doesn't want me to watch this School of Wrestling business. He didn't say anything about it.
Oh, watch it all.
Thank you, Bobby. Oracle, tell the people. So we've got Grindication on Thursday at 9 Eastern, which is going to be very, very exciting. And go for it.
We have this Thursday coming up, 2 nights from now, 9 p.m. Eastern, the return of Grindication, myself and Joe, and any other Grinner who would like to join us. For September 1997 worldwide.
Yes, sir.
We will be tuning into that. And just to give a sneak peek on that in preparation.
Mm-hmm.
Give me a moment here. Fill that air.
Okay. All right. Folks, we're going to give you a sneak peek here of some of the upcoming. This is the Oracle Week. It's 3 shows this week. Oracle's so busy that I didn't even... When we were trying to put something over Friday before we landed on this evil idea, I didn't even try.
This show is 2 hours and 31 minutes long.
God bless.
So that is the length of the show. Probably long. I mean, we can always cut it off if we want to, but
we'll go for it.
2.5, probably right at 2.5 hours. Okay, so got that out of the way. Here's the long one. Sunday, the first episode of the returning School of Wrestling. It is the obscurities of the Ruthless Aggression era. And this will be going on throughout the entire rest of 2024. This month, September, we will be covering tag teams of the Ruthless Aggression era. The lineup is as follows. will be for the WWE Tag Team Championships on December 18th, 2003 SmackDown. The Basham Brothers defending against Los Guerreros, the world's greatest tag team, and Rikishi and Scotty 2 Hotty. We will see La Resistance wrestle Rhino and Sergeant Slaughter on Monday Night Raw on June 28th, 2004. We will see La Resistance wrestle William Regal and Eugene for the tag titles in Manchester, England.
There you go.
We will see Eminem defend their WWE Tag Team Championships against Hardcore Holly and Charlie Haas in a 15 minutes of fame match.
Yep, that match rules.
Which I believe airs on June 2nd, 2005, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
We will see. How many is that? That's 3, that's 4, that's 5, that's 5, right?
I think so, yeah.
And we will see. We're going to do 7. We will see the Pit Bulls of Jamie Noble and Kid Cash squash Funaki and Scotty 2 Hotty on, I believe, the July 7th, 2006 edition of SmackDown. And then we will see Lundrick defend the tag titles against what the hell was their name?
You talking about Idle and Stevens?
Idle and Stevens, yes. And the Pit Bulls, Jamie Noble and Kid Cash, on, I believe, the September 22nd edition of SmackDown, 2006. And there is, we will discuss some of, we'll go in depth about these tag teams, talk about.
It should be clear. The format of this will be much more. It'll be like this.
I'll look up some reviews. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about some vignettes and stuff and whatnot. But those are the 7 matches.
Yeah.
I think the longest one is the 15 minutes of fame match. Sorry for the short notice. I know we only got 5 days till. But Sunday, September 29th, 5 p.m. Eastern, we will have the tag team edition of the Obscurities of the Ruthless Aggression Era School of Wrestling.
There you go. Rolls right off the tongue. I love it.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that's going to be really fun. And we may even, when I say we, I say me, I may even be circling back later that night to watch the FTR's indie match as a little bonus stream. But the focus on Sunday is School of Wrestling. I'll tweet the lineup tomorrow when everyone's woke up. But that's what's ahead of us. Now, before I ask the great contrarian Alex what's happening with the contrarians, I will say this Friday's program. I mean, the lads have heard, I think, enough to co-sign and say this is going to be a pretty weird show that's taking place on Friday. Ibu and I, the wine sessions. If you like Hanging with Hobbit, we think you're going to like this. If you don't like Hanging with Hobbit, you're going to fucking hate this. It's going to be the most, Ibu described it as the most ambitious thing he's ever done with Joe Holbert, which I don't really know what that means because generally we just go into StreamYard and talk about wrestling, but I think he's right. So that's Friday. It will premiere at 10:10 p.m. Eastern, which is going to be a hell of a time. Alex, what is going on with the Contrarians?
We just are in the process of hitting our 10-year anniversary of podcasting. So we've got some retrospective stuff talking about just favorite movies, memories, and whatnot. But actually on the main feed, we've got Saving Private Ryan coming up, Judge Dredd, the classic Sylvester Stallone mid-90s action film with Diane Lane and Rob Schneider, as you do, Yeah, we got some irons in the fire right now. The Assassin's Creed episode on the quite terrible Michael Fassbender film from about 10 years ago just dropped as well. We also have, I know that the last couple times I've been on the Grin, I've been kind of intentionally cryptic about a project the Contrarians have rolling out here soon. We've finally gotten some wheels in motion about that, and I think some of y'all listening to this are going to enjoy what we got going on.
Yes.
Bit of a crossover. I think we'll be ready to officially announce that next month. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, we are thecontrarians.com and at Contrarian Prime all across social media. Joey, Oracle, Bobby, thank you as always for having me.
Our pleasure. Hell of a time here this evening, folks. We hope you enjoyed this. Up next, of course, we have the Scott Hall episode, which is going to be tremendous.
Hey, everyone, for the screen cap, everyone put it up.
There you go. Get that, folks. Please tweet that at us. Thank you. All right. This has been. We do so many plugs now that when it doesn't even feel like we should end the show. It's like we must have forgotten something. This is where we're at. In I mentioned tomorrow night's Dynamite Grin Along. I think that's everything. Oh no, it's not everything. I knew I had forgotten something. The confirmed Shoot and I's Pervert Ring of Honor thing is going to premiere on Friday. I don't really know what we're going to do on that show. That we're going to put a roster together, but it's going to be fucking gross, dude. Check it out this Friday. So it'll be like 6, 7 Eastern. So all right, it's been a great time. Like the video. We didn't say like the video a lot, Bob, or did we? We did a very good job of that tonight.
Please make sure you smash that like button.
Look remorseful Bob there, pleading with the people. Like the video, all that good stuff. Keep grinning. All out. Enjoy this outro. Have a good night, folks. Bye.